Welcome, or bienvenidos. Tonight we're going to welcome the students from Cesar Chavez Language Academy and their teacher, Maestra Maureen Promis, who are going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. When you are ready.
Prometo Estados Unidos de América. Que a la República que representa una nación ante Dios indivisible con libertad y justicia para todos.
Oh, thank you. We're going to do it in English too. We're going to do it in English too, so if you'll remain standing and join us again, please.
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much, students. Thank you. Well, that was the cutest Pledge of Allegiance ever, don't you think? Okay, we have no actions to report out of closed session. There are no items considered in closed session for action in open session. Do we have any statements of abstention? Adjustments to the agenda? Board member requests for information. So then we'll move to C7, approval of minutes of the regular board meeting held on August 22nd, 2018.
Move approval.
Director Carl, second by Director Pugh. Roll call vote, please.
Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Pugh?
Aye.
Director Fong? Director Anderson?
Aye.
Director Sheffield?
Aye.
President Close?
Aye. Okay. C8, approval of minutes of the special board meeting held on September 5th, 2018.
I move approval.
Moved by, this is a hard one, but I'm going to say Director Pugh, second by Director Fong. Roll call vote, please.
Director Pugh?
Aye.
Director Fong? Aye. Director Carl? Abstain. Director Anderson?
Aye.
Director Sheffield?
Aye.
President Close?
Aye. Okay, it brings us to public comment on non-agenda items. This is an opportunity for the public to address the board on things that are not on the agenda. Personnel matters are not an appropriate subject for that. Instead, we would direct you to the Assistant Superintendent of HR. I don't have any blue cards, and I've been talking for a minute, so I'm going to assume that there are no public comments on non-agenda items and move on to reports. CSEA report. Is President Afonso here? She is not here. SRTA report, President Lyon.
Things are going well with labor management relationships, and other than that, I have no report.
Wait, do we have a labor management collaborative report?
We don't have one at this time, but we should next month.
Looking forward to it. Superintendent, do you have a report for us tonight?
My report is really just about the back to school nights that are happening. We had last night at the elementary. Tonight, unfortunately, our schedule, I don't know how this happened, but we will be sure that it doesn't happen again in the future, is the middle school back to school nights, and tomorrow is the high school. The one thing I did want to do in my report was to show you one of the videos we've created around our wonderfully new digital tools. And so I'll let the video speak for itself, and can you guys get it ready to show? Hi, I'm Diane Kitamura, Superintendent of Santa Rosa City Schools. Communication that used to come to us through papers and letters is now coming to us through our computers and especially through our smartphones. Our school district has some new digital tools that will work on both computers and phones and make it easier for families and staff to find information and stay involved. Most of our schools have websites to share information with their families, but some information affects us all, and you can find it on our new district website, srcschools.org. You'll find quick buttons to things families look for most: our district calendar, news and announcements. And if you're active on social media, there's a quick way to like and follow our pages. Many families found social media was a great way to stay in touch when our schools were closed in October of 2017. The website can be viewed on mobile devices too. And speaking of digital, our schools are all moving away from paper flyers to digital flyers using a service called Peach Jar. Flyers for each school are emailed to parents and guardians and available on our website. Grandparents, babysitters, and others can sign up to receive school flyers or look on the website. No more missing out because the paper got lost. Please give your most up-to-date contact information to your child's school. Thanks to generous donations, we have opened a free integrated wellness center for students and families. If you need tutoring, counseling, or basic nurse services, the center is open Mondays and Wednesdays from 3:30 to 5:30. There is no cost, so please ask your school for more information. Remember, attendance in school is very important. Missing school, even with an excused absence, means missing valuable learning time. Every minute counts when it comes to your child's preparation for their future. Let's start the year by getting to school every day, staying in touch, and being informed.
Great report, Superintendent. Very modern. Director Carl would like to know where the music came from.
That's stock music so that we do not get red flagged by YouTube. So it's stock music. Do you like it? Do you want me to send it to you? Oh.
Trying to figure out whether that was, I thought Wednesday night market was over. So
It's because it's, right, because it's stock music, I think it's used for many a video.
Got it. Thank you. Well, I don't have a report of anything except that I'm going to make an announcement that we're also going to make later, but I just feel like I want to maximize the number of people who hear this.
Good evening, class of 2010. Before I commence my speech,
My voice changed suddenly. That was alarming. I'll make an announcement that we're going to make later, which is that we are declaring a vacancy in Area 2 of our trustee areas. And so we're going to be taking applications for appointments to the board. So this time people can apply to be appointed instead of having to run a campaign. And that process is starting immediately after we talk about that today. But I just want to know everybody to know that that's going to happen and to tell their friends and family so we have a lot of applicants. And after that, I'll go to board member reports. Director Fong, do you have a report? Director Carl? Director Pugh?
Just want to say I had an excellent visitation of Brook Hill School and Burbank as well. Just a great time. And then also had a little bit of time to spend with the ag program at Santa Rosa High School, which I'll be following up with next week. They're talking about their facilities used out at the farm, and it's quite an amazing project. And so I just want to alert the board that you'll probably see more and hear more about this as we go along. But just had a great experience with teachers and students as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Director Pugh. Director Anderson.
I had a lovely time last night at Proctor for their back to school night. You know, I think it's the best part of anybody who's involved in education to be actually at the school and see the excitement of the primary students especially and their parents, and it just really makes you feel like we're involved in something really wonderful. And Principal Olmsted did a lovely job of showing me around, and I just came away feeling like they're doing a lot of really good work there.
Thank you, Director Anderson. Director Sheffield.
Just a thank you to the teachers for hosting a really wonderful candidate forum a couple weeks back. Very informative and really great to see so many people turn out. Thank you.
Thanks. Back to you, Director Pugh. Do you have a CSBA or NSBA report for us?
I do. The California School Board Association September board meeting will be taking place very soon. We have quite a bit of business to take care of. There's been a lot of things going on in our legislature that we're fighting off. The Superintendent of Public Instruction, Torkelson, appointed a new committee, a new cabinet, called the Charter School Action Team. This will take a look at all the charter school laws that have been enacted since the time charter schools were approved in our state, with the idea of making them more relevant and making sure that they are not taking advantage of the purse strings, so to speak. CSBA placed an open letter to for our next governor, whoever that is, urging the release of $7 billion in facility funding. So far, only 20% of that has been expended, and this goes back to Prop 51, which is several years old now, and we want the governor to let loose of the construction funding for our districts. CSBA continues to push on Prop 98 revenue rebenching. As you know, the Department of Finance is interpreting laws a little bit differently than they have in the past, and it could have a major impact financially to fund Prop 98 and to service our schools. And then most curiously, one of the curious things that's going on is the California Assembly have passed a bill to allow students medical marijuana in public schools. The state lawmakers recently approved the bill that would allow parents to administer medical cannabis to their children at school. However, we were most fortunate to make sure that school districts are in charge of those things and ultimately have the decision-making ability to ban medical cannabis should they want to. And we'll all be discussing this in a weekend real soon in Sacramento. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Director Pugh. And I almost forgot, Student Board Member Director Mackin, do you have a report for us tonight?
I don't have one tonight.
Next time. Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda.
Move approval of items E1 through E13.
Second.
Moved by Director Carl, second by Director Fong. Roll call vote, please.
Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Fong?
Aye.
Director Pugh?
Aye.
Director Anderson?
Aye.
Director Sheffield?
Aye.
President Close?
Aye.
Student Board Member?
Aye.
Okay. The motion carries, and it brings us to our action items already. F1, approval of resolution recognizing September 15th to October 15th, 2018 as Hispanic Heritage Month.
Good evening, President Close, Superintendent Kitamura, members of the board. Tonight we are bringing forward this resolution. It is why we brought Cesar Chavez Language Academy second graders today to take us through the Pledge of Allegiance. So with that, I turn it back over to the board.
Does anyone have any questions or comments about this resolution?
I'd like to make a motion to accept item F1.
I'll second.
Moved by Director Pugh, second by Director Sheffield. Roll call vote, please.
Director Pugh? Aye. Director Sheffield?
Aye.
Director Fong? Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Anderson?
Aye.
President Close?
Actually, before I vote aye, I just want to say real quickly one more time to express my gratitude to the staff for moving these kind of resolutions to the front of the agenda so they're not an afterthought, but it is something that's highlighted while we have an audience and so that we can talk a little bit about it. So thank you again for that. And with that, aye.
And Student Board Member?
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries, and that brings us to F2, approval of resolution for September Suicide Prevention Month. Director Anderson, thank you.
Thank you. I'm really glad that we are bringing forward this resolution and hopefully a topic of conversation that will not simply be a one-month recognition, but let this be the beginning of a really rich and ongoing discussion. You know, death by suicide is the second leading cause of death for people ages 13 to 18. And it's also a leading cause of death for youth ages 10 to 12. By some estimates, it's the third highest leading cause of death for children in that age group, and it's 99% preventable. So imagine if there was another disease, and that's the way we are now learning we should think about this, if there was a disease that was running rampant in our community that was putting our children at risk for death, and it was preventable. I think that we would all really want a very to bring this to the forefront as a topic of conversation. And in fact, today, the coroner's office let me know that in 2017, in Sonoma County, there were 63 deaths by suicide, and 5 people were 13 to 17 years old. Year to date this year, there have been 37 deaths by suicide, and 3 of them were teenagers. And the good news is we don't have to invent anything. There are actually movements and communities have really taken this on. From Baltimore to Marin County, they have put out really great programs to make this a topic of discussion and to make it an awareness and early prevention program, not something that you just wait until you're in crisis mode to take care of. And there is the film coming up that I hope as many as possible will attend. It's on September 18th at the Finley Center. Unfortunately, it is $20 for the film screening, which I'm really sorry to see that, because that will prevent a lot of people who really need to go to this screening from attending, and I hope that in the future, maybe we can ask that the Sonoma County Office of Education or the community at large could have a screening just for teenagers for free, because that's who needs to see this. So I would urge everybody to attend the film, to keep this a topic of conversation way beyond September of 2018. Thank you.
Superintendent. Assistant Superintendent Mazzara, could you speak to the training, and also I would like our staff to see how we can get this film for students for free. So that would be my request, but can you talk about the training?
Yeah, so some of the trainings involved we've already went through for teachers. So backing up, we adopted a suicide prevention policy last year. We're in the implementation of that this year, and we've prioritized at every school site administrator and one other staff member who are kind of the hub to make sure those students have a connection and they follow through the processes that may be involved after. We emphasize it with teachers at the back to school time, and part of the afternoon is there was an online mandatory training that we required all our staff to do as part of our emphasis. And so we're going to be rolling through this training with our counselors and other deep staff like school psychologists and clinicians, and just talk about that awareness. I want to just also note that unfortunately the county has reduced some services that we use for suicide prevention through the CAPE program, and we're compensating through that with some of our own funding, but it is kind of a loss that many of our school sites are feeling, and we're just going to do the best we can, and I will contact them about trying to see what funds we have available so we can preview this and show this at our school sites.
Sorry, one more thing. That brings to mind, I wonder if we can add this to a potential agenda for discussion with the City Council.
That's a great idea. You can add that to our list of requests. Well, I really appreciate this being brought forward, and one of the real problems with that leads to this is the fact that mental health problems and illness are still stigmatized, and it's hard for people to talk about them. And so the more we talk about it out in the open and as a disease and as a real overall health and wellness issue, then the greater impact we can make. So I'm glad that we're doing this. With that, it's an action item.
I move we approve the resolution.
Second.
Moved by Director Anderson, second by Director Carl. Roll call vote, please.
Director Anderson?
Aye.
Director Carl? Director Fong?
Aye.
Director Pugh?
Aye.
Director Sheffield?
Aye.
President Close? Student Board Member?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. I lost my agenda somehow online, so we are going to F3. Yep. Resolution to declare vacancy and appointment in trustee area 2. Do we have a, we don't have a report on this?
No.
Well, I already did make basically an announcement, and I can repeat that we do need to declare a vacancy in Area 2, and so we're going to be taking applicants. We hope that we get lots of people who are interested in this. We get lots of questions about who's eligible. The number one thing is that you just need to live in that area. I've heard questions about, is it okay if you own a business there? No. If you live there part-time? No. You need to live there. That's the number one thing, and if you do and you're passionate about schools, we'd love to get your application. And I have one blue card. Michael Hilber.
Yes, I'm going to say that I disagree with this declaration here. It's not true that at this point in time you legally have a vacancy in this area. The position will be on the ballot, according to what I read about the registrar had to say, and anybody who's resident of that area is eligible to self-nominate as a write-in candidate, and this is frequently done. The write-in candidates receive votes, and they are in fact tabulated. And you check a box which is below any typewritten name, and you write in the name of your chosen write-in candidate. It was clearly demonstrated in a recent Sebastopol City election where somebody ran a write-in campaign and I think received a few thousand votes. So I think the thing to do is let it go on the ballot and let anybody who wants to run a write-in candidacy declare and seek votes and see how the election turns out before you take any action on this, because it's more important to let the voters speak. And no, I don't agree with the finding that at this time you have a vacancy in this position.
Thank you. Anybody have, Director Carl?
My understanding, and I understand the position, and in fact, if it was on the ballot, I would agree with you. But since there was no opposition in 2 of the districts, those names actually won't appear on the ballot. There will only be one district that has that will show up on the ballot, and only for that district. So there will not be an opportunity for anybody. And we sought legal opinion as to what the process is. Frankly, my initial reaction is, was, why would this board make that appointment? Why wouldn't the new board make the appointment, as an example? And the state law actually requires us to have that person available at the organizational meeting for the new board, which is December 12th, which obviously means we have to make an appointment prior to December 12th. So I think your point's well taken. If there was a ballot, you do that. And whoever got the most write-in candidate position votes would be elected. But since there's nobody on the ballot, then this is the route that has to be taken.
Thank you. Director Sheffield?
I just had a question about the person that will come forward for this position and filling a term. It will be a 4-year term, is my understanding. And I'm wondering, is that necessary, or can it be a temporary appointment that then we could actually have a 2-year appointment? I'm sorry, could be a 2-year appointment, and then we can have a legitimate election to finish that term?
I raised that same question. It seemed to me that made some level of sense too. And the reading from the code was that it's an appointment for the full length of whatever the term is. Now, if one of us left with a year left, it would be just that period of time. I kind of like the concept that, I first liked the concept that the new board would do it, that in fact there'd be an election 2 years in, but apparently that's not the way the state law is set up. No.
And I checked with legal counsel on it too, because I asked the same question, and our attorney indicated it would be a 4-year term, because this is an appointment, not a provisional appointment.
Okay.
So again, I really want to reiterate that we'd love to have a lot of applicants. You know, there's definitely a time commitment to service, but I think oftentimes the real barrier is the idea of running for office, and certainly I understand that it's a tough and process running for office. So this is opportunity to serve without doing that. So if anybody's interested or you know anybody who is, please spread the word. Director Carl.
Thank you. One other point I think is important. We get a number of applicants. There will be a board subcommittee that will initially look at those applications to make sure that they're qualified, that they're residents, everything associated with that, and a paper screen will occur prior to the October 24th meeting, and that President Close, in my opinion, has wisely determined that that committee ought to be made up of board members who will be on the board after December, which means that Mr. Kristoff and myself will not be on that committee. And then we will have open interviews at our meeting on the 24th of October. So people who are getting interviewed will be interviewed in this chamber, on TV, in front of who all is here, and everybody will have then an opportunity to see. And then the board has to make their decision in a very open and transparent procedure.
That's correct. And if you haven't seen the resolution or the timeline, that these applications are due on or before October 8th. Bless you. Anybody else? This is an action item.
I move resolution to declare vacancy and appointment in trustee area 2.
I'll second.
Moved by Director Fong, second by Director Anderson. Roll call vote, please.
Director Fong?
Aye.
Director Anderson?
Aye.
Director Carl? Director Pugh? Director Sheffield?
Aye.
President Close?
Aye.
Student Board Member?
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries, and that brings us to F4, discussion item on extended school year.
It's going to take us here just a minute to organize. It's a big group tonight. So while they're coming to the table, tonight we will be having a presentation on the extended learning opportunities in summer 2018. Director Goyle, Coordinator Evans, and Director Dillon will be leading the presentation and also being interviewed. What's wrong with me? Introducing is the word I was looking for. Introducing those who participated in all of these amazing opportunities that were provided for our students, TK through 12 this summer. So with that, I turn it over to them.
Is that better? Okay. Could have used my teacher voice, but good evening, Superintendent Kitamura, members of the board. We are pleased tonight to share with you a summary and highlights of this year's extended learning opportunities. Each summer, we are pleased to offer a variety of enrichment opportunities for our students to choose from, as well as the continued opportunity to support high school students with completing courses to be on course for graduation. This summer enrollment for our extended learning programs reached 2,186 students. That is inclusive of some duplicated students, maybe students who took 2 courses in high school or participated in 2 programs, but that's a number we're really excited and proud of. The opportunities highlighted tonight represent offerings of enrichment, like I said, in academics, but really opportunities that have increased due to some opportunities we had due to the fires, some things we were able to do to add some more resources and learning sessions for our students, as well as some sessions to support A to G implementation and students in moving that direction. With us tonight, we have administrators and teachers from the programs, and we're really going to turn it over to them to introduce themselves and share a little bit about each of the programs they participated in.
So that's me. So I'm Greg Hauser, the teacher on special assignment for migrant education for Santa Rosa City Schools. And part of my role each year is to help oversee our summer programming for a summer school. This year, it was at Biella. We served 200 students, Kinder Academy through 5th grade. The focus was on literacy and math through hands-on integrated units. So it was very much project-based, and we also had a binational teacher from Michoacan. The pictures there are definitely some of the work that she was working on. And we did have many core tutors as well. We had 70 migrant students, so we have around 86 migrant students Kinder Academy through 5th, so that represented 82%, which is fairly decent given that some are traveling and not around. Like I mentioned, we had a binational teacher from Michoacan. She did incredible art projects that were connected to Dia de los Muertos, or Day of the Dead, and that picture at the bottom is some samples of some altars that the students did. We also tend to have every year an egg drop, and that's when the fire truck was there, and the kids build these sort of boxes and put an egg inside, and then they drop it to see if the egg does not break, which is super fun to watch that. And in the other picture there is our binational teacher who's working on one of the projects in the right-hand corner. I have to say that it is an extreme pleasure of mine to work in summer school. I smile going there every day, seeing the kids and the activities that they're doing. And it's a shorter day, they have a little bit longer time outside, and it's very project-based and super fun.
Good evening. I'm Elisa Haley, and I'm principal for Helen Lehman Elementary School, and I was fortunate enough to be the principal for the Excel Youth Program with conjunction with Sonoma State. It was awe-inspiring as an administrator, as a teacher, and as just walking around seeing students from our entire district, grades 3 through 7, working together, playing together, learning together. We had served 205 students. We offered 2 sessions each day, so we had a morning and afternoon of 5 different activities, and I'm just gonna read them because they're very impressive, and I was impressed actually going through and seeing the kids in action. They had coding games with Scratch where the kids actually learned to code. They had CSI Sonoma, which they used forensic science to identify bones. They actually dug up bones inside our school garden. They weren't real bones from, anyone, but just brought by the Sonoma State director. They did Harry Potter performances, so they were on stage. We took down the performance, and they got to do all the Harry Potter excitement. It actually, one student, it was great because he had no idea about Harry Potter, and the next thing you know, his dad said, "I can't get him to stop reading." And we're like, I mean, who doesn't want to hear that? How to write a graphic novel, out of this world astronomy. They're learning about the stars, space, black holes, planets. They did Age of the Dinosaurs. They did brain games using Mensa activities. We did the art of storytelling through Pixar. They did storyboards, which made their stories. They did the science of science fiction. They learned about alien life, artificial intelligence, and time travel. We also did another writing. They learned to paint. They had clay. The best one, probably not for the parents, but for the kids, art of argumentation. So the kids really can get to their parents now. They did a lot of tinkering, and they did edible science. They did circuits and creative writing. So it was a lot of enrichment, things that I actually, years ago, because my kids are so old, went to Sonoma State and took my kids and paid for them to go, and we were able to offer it to all of our kids. Some of the most heartwarming and wrenching moments were when a parent came up to me and said, "I just want to thank you." She said she had lost it all. She said she felt so grateful that there was something offered for her kids, plus food. She said she had never been offered food. We had free breakfast and free lunch. She was just so grateful and thankful. And it was, that meant probably the most out of it, because knowing that we were able to offer kids, and I could see kids right there that had lost their homes, something, and giving them enrichment and giving them excitement and the love of learning was really, I feel really blessed.
Good evening, Elizabeth Evans, Coordinator, Teaching and Learning. This summer, the Project Maker Camp provided an opportunity for our students in 4th through 7th grades to experience hands-on learning opportunities. And those experiences included a collaboration with the local organization called Listening for a Change. Those students had the opportunity to interview people from the community, including a Holocaust survivor. So it was very powerful for the students. We also had opportunities like taiko drumming and coding and a class with an air-powered rocket with an egg drop. And we have Matt Davis here to talk a little bit about what he did in the summer program, Maker Camp.
Good evening. I'd just like to say the Maker Camp is one of the most wonderful things I've ever been involved with in my 21 years here in Santa Rosa City Schools. And I had the children make musical instruments out of PVC pipe, film canisters, surgical gloves, and straws, and which I think they took home and drove their parents crazy with. And we also did wind-up toy cars with rubber bands and plastic water bottles and film canisters, and we did the egg drop as well. I'd like to encourage you to keep supporting Maker Camp. It's, besides being good for the kids, it's good for me. As a high school physics teacher, there's some cross-pollination that goes on. It gives me ideas to take back to my regular classroom and elevate it up to the high school level. And I would also just politely ask if you could give us a little more money for materials, and it would be nice to be able to do some bigger field trips, but it's a great program. Thank you for your support.
Hi, Ronnie Goyle, Director of Teaching and Learning. Students had an opportunity to enroll in either a math or English language arts 2-week support program that focused on foundational skills to build a bridge between middle school and high school to promote success in these classes, thus a boost to meeting A through G requirements. These students attended class for 2 weeks at Cook Middle School in either, again, English or math. And one of the things I thought was pretty amazing came out of that program was a student talked to one of the teachers and said, "I want to be a teacher now because of this program, because of you." So it was an amazing experience for our students to have this environment and this opportunity to attend class with 2 wonderful teachers. The Mike Hauser Academy, we just finished our 11th year partnering with the Santa Rosa Metro Chamber. This project-based learning program really focuses on STEM careers, and I think the quote that is up here from a student really summarizes the intent and the mission of the Mike Hauser Academy, and I'm going to go ahead and read it because I thought it was fabulous. "The part I liked the most about the MHA, Mike Hauser Academy, was the fact that we got to see careers that use math and science every day. Something I learned from this program is how professionals use math that we learn in school in their careers." So students really found the purpose of the program. One student talked about even pursuing a career in the STEM field now, having these experiences. Another one said that this is one of the best math experiences they've ever had. some of the projects that students got to do was making an air-powered race car, and it was really neat at graduation to see them bring that with them and talk about that. Another thing, Sutter Health was one of our partners this year, and they got to actually kind of look at a heart. And some of the students went in there saying, oh my gosh, I don't want to look at this. And then afterwards they're like, yeah, let me see it. So we did serve 110 students. They did receive 5 elective credits, and we really want to thank the 20 local businesses that partnered, because these businesses are providing a true hands-on experience for anywhere from 1 day to 3 days, such as Keysight and Medtronics. So the students really got a wonderful experience from our community, and we continue to partner with the Metro Chamber in this area, and we're looking forward to a very amazing 12th year. Thank you.
Once again, we partnered with the Luther Burbank Center for the Arts to provide the mariachi camp, and this year we had mariachi, visual art, and then we added a science component as well as a Latin hip hop class. This year we had 182 students, and it's really exciting that we have students lined up to come to this camp, and then a waiting list of like 30 or 40 people trying to get into the camp, and this year everybody was able to get into the camp. That's the nice thing about it. Jose Soto, who's the lead person, he's just like, yeah, y'all come. He just wants everybody to come. He's so family and community oriented. Another nice thing about this program is that we are able to offer 5 elective credits to students who are going to be in the 9th grade or above, and those students, this year we had 9 students who successfully completed the program. So it's such an exciting program, and I just love it.
Hi, I'm Valerie Jordan, and I have the pleasure of being the principal for the extended school year for special education. This is my 4th year being the principal there, and we oversee 4 different sites, and we serve students from age 3 to 22. This year we were at Steel Lane Elementary, Santa Rosa Middle School, Montgomery High School, and then our transition program at the kitchen. Students work really well with the community members. We do work with 3rd Street Movies. We also work with Santa Rosa Transit to teach students how to ride the bus safely. They also provide bus passes for 30 days, so a lot of our students go on community-based instruction, get hands-on experience, how to navigate and learn how to read a map to get to different places in Santa Rosa. That's a skill. And they had a really good time this year. The 2 pictures there are from Field Day, which we had an amazing time. The 3-legged race, we had burlap sack races, we had water tossing and music. We had a DJ this year. They just had a blast. So thank you again for allowing me to be their principal.
Mm-hmm.
And Kimberly. I have to say I've done summer school about 12 different times, and it's always at the high school level, and next year I want to work at the middle or primary because it's way more fun. Way more fun. Oh, I'm Andrea Correa. I'm a vice principal here in Santa Rosa City Schools, and Dr. Kissel and I had the pleasure of working together this summer at Montgomery High School for traditional high school summer school credit recovery.
Hi, thanks for having us here this evening. I'm glad I just made it. Just to tell you a little bit about the program that we had at Montgomery. So as the board is well aware, this is for credit recovery, so students who have already gone through the course and for whatever reason didn't have the time to demonstrate their knowledge. So we always think of summer school as that little extra time to show us what you know so that you can get credit. We held 2 sessions. The sessions run 3 weeks. We meet Monday through Thursday. This has been a very popular method for running summer school because it sort of allows for a 3-day weekend, which is attractive to families because they still feel like they can access some of those summer activities and they aren't completely marred down by having to go to summer school. So we hear a lot of positive feedback from parents and from students that they really like that schedule. And so I hope that that continues on. We had 638 students for the first session. We had 451 students for the second session. We ran an online credit recovery program that was a little bit different than previous years. We introduced a new program called Odysseyware, and it's a very robust, I'll call it online learning platform. It does something very different than what our previous credit recovery program for the online system did. We had Cyber High before. With Odyssey, where the students were able to take a pre-test, and based on their, how well they did or did not do on the pre-test, the curriculum in that would sort of be decided. So virtually we had some students that tested out based on their pretest, good portions of the units in the course, and some people got through very quickly. Likewise, we had some students who did not do very well in the pretest and had to go through all of the units, and so their time in the Odysseyware classes was a little bit longer. It was difficult running 2 different programs in session 1. We had Odysseyware that we primarily used for our non-graduating seniors. We were also running the Odysseyware alongside Cyber High, and we use that primarily for our 10th and 11th graders. It had different successes. I think what was the most impactful for me is having students come in and say, wow, I really learned a lot. And I can tell you that in my many summers of working summer school, I have yet to have somebody who took a Cyber High class come in and say, I learned a lot. So that was something that I think will be really nice if we carry that program into the regular school year. I see that we have one of our teachers who is with us at summer school, so I'm gonna stop talking some of the anecdotal stuff from an admin perspective and let you hear from somebody who really made a difference at summer school.
Hello, my name is Kevin Costello. Oh, sorry. Hello, I'm Kevin Costello. I teach at Santa Rosa High School, and this summer we did a green construction class at Montgomery High School. I had 10 students the first day, and the second day I had 18. It was at 21, I think, at one point. And so I was occupying and starting over, and by the end of the second day, they were all on the same page, and I taught them about scale. We made scale model houses, and we got the material delivered, and we had all the framing done the same day. Mm-hmm. And then it was, okay, now we're gonna actually do this. So I broke them into groups, and they each one made one of the frames, and the pictures that are up there, one shows the framing in, and then the second one shows it completed, except for the last day we were able to paint it. And the kids are great. The motivation is great. They're teenagers still, so you know there is time on the phone on whatever the game of the month is. But I had a wonderful experience, and I had kids that I didn't know were at Santa Rosa High School because it's so big, and you know I don't see them. They've come by and checked in with me. One of the girls that was one of the second arrivals got it in her schedule, so she's now in my class, and I look to her because she's already proven to me that she's got some skills. She's kind of a spokesperson in the class. It's a beginning class, but it was really a great experience, and I loved it. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to do it.
Thank you. All right. Yeah. There we go. So it is always a pleasure to come and share about the summer programs, and what I love with every year, and I noticed it this year, is the slideshow just gets a little bit longer every year, and that's a good thing, because what that means is we are continuing to expand and add classes and programs and opportunities for our students. So I think that's exciting. Looking forward, we're always looking forward to the next year. We're proud of what we offered this summer, but we look forward to next summer and seeing how we can expand. And so we've shared a few next steps. One of them really is to expand the Boost program so that we can offer it to more students. It was new this year, and I think that now, having had the program, we will be better ready to get the enrollment higher in that program so that we can better support students moving into high school. As you heard, a lot of the opportunities were enrichment, and that's really what we want to offer our students in summer, experiences maybe that they wouldn't have otherwise. As Elisa Haley shared, the partnership with Sonoma State in particular was something that we didn't expect and didn't know that we would be able to do. And with some funding out of the fire relief, we were really able to offer this to an expanded group of students and families, and it meant the world to them. So I think we want to look at how we might continue that, because bringing those quality programs from Sonoma State onto a Santa Rosa City School campus at no charge for our students is pretty amazing. And then just in closing, as you could see in most of our programs, the community is involved in most of the programs that we offer in the summer, and we have many, many partnerships, but I think we want to continue to kind of reach out to the community and see how we can together support our students in our summers. So with that, I thank you. I thank the administrators, teachers, everyone who's here to share about the programs, and turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Board members, questions, comments? Director Carl.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for the report. I appreciate all you coming down and giving us the pieces that you were involved with. It's exciting. I'm wondering if staff, or particularly Kimberly, can help me on the high school summer program. We see the amount of online credit recovery. In the traditional teacher-led courses, there were 1,089 students. Do we have a sense of how many credits were earned in those programs? And if not, can we?
That's data that we could forward to the board. Unfortunately, we didn't have as much time with the data as we have in previous summers. But that's data that we could work on for the board as well.
Great. If we can get that in an information item, that would be fabulous. Thank you.
Director Fong.
I do understand, Dr. Klissel, that you were busy this summer.
Yes, I was, Director Fong, in many ways, professionally and personally. Thank you.
Okay, we'll stop there. Thank you for a really great summer. It's rich, it's varied, it provides so many opportunities for so many of our kids. I'm really happy about it. So because of your leadership and the staff, the teachers, the green, Kevin, Mr. Costello, really great job. I know that shop well, so good for you in building those little sheds. If they're for sale, let me know. So I just want to say this. Every kid that was listening to this, or every parent that was listening to this, as a parent, I want to put our kids in, I want to put all our kids in this. And so let's keep having these discussions. You want to expand it. I would like to see it expanded. Diane's nodding her head right here, like a bobblehead. Because it is about enrichment and it is about engagement, because this is nothing, engagement and enrichment go together, and you saw that, and we thank our partners. We thank SSU, we thank Metro Chamber, we thank SCO and everybody else who is there that I'm not mentioning. When we talk about our city and our city being a community and all being partners, you know, you've got my support and to continue to grow this, because we can't just have special, amazing enrichment things in summer. We need to look at 9 months of school, right? And you know that. And then the last thing I want to talk about is the high school summer credit recovery. Odyssey Wear sounds fantastic. I really like your comment about, Dr. Klissel, about I learned something and you never heard it at Cyber High. Oh well. So good for us on Odyssey Wear. How do we continue to support kids in success during the school year and not have them make it up in summer? Or how do we incorporate it during the school year and not have them wait for summer school? We've all heard kids say, I'm just gonna do it in summer school, and they give up. And it's not that we allow them to give up, but it's very hard to move that mindset once that happened for a child, for all the different reasons. So I would like to see us move that credit recovery back, besides online, or all the different ways that kids learn, which that's what's really great about this. So many different ways to learn, so many hands-on, different ways to learn that engage kids in their success. And so let's keep incorporating that into our school year with everybody. And I know we're going that way, but it's like not fast enough for me, for any kid who's not engaged, right? Okay, so thank you so much for your work. Everything very impressive.
Director Sheffield.
Thank you for the wonderful report. I think you did visibly bring out smiles on our faces, and everything that you did for our students over the summer, especially the students that were impacted by the fire. It definitely meant a lot to their families, I know. And also you had highlighted some of the many partnerships involved, and Director Fong had mentioned a few as well. Just, you know, as we're thinking about more opportunities and expanding programs to just, you know, again, work with our community partners and find really good fits. I think we have that in us. We have demonstrated success with the partnerships that we already have, and definitely encourage expanding that. I did have a question about the high school summer program, and I'm wondering about attendance and attendance remaining consistent through the program. Is that something we have tonight, some record?
Hi. Attendance usually is very good during summer school because students have a mandatory amount of seat time that they have to be in the classroom in order to get the credits if they were to pass the class. So we don't have a lot of issues with students being dropped due to attendance. If they miss that first day, we automatically drop them, and we have so many kids on the waiting list that we bring them in. Okay. So the 638 students you see here in session 1, for the most part, completed that session. We don't have grade data, but we know that they completed. The reason why we have less students in session 2 is because we had less teachers that were available to work during that session. And so naturally it went down. But in summer school, in general, for credit recovery, kids know that they're pretty lucky to get in because we have such a large wait list, and we're the only district in this area that offers a summer program like credit recovery. And so we've been fairly lucky with attendance, and we're pretty good about letting them know they have to be there.
So there's a wait list. And so for you, I mean, a session 2, somebody who was on that session 1 wait list who might have been waiting, I'm just looking at the number difference. I mean, it's a, you know, 180 student difference.
A lot of times what happens is in the first session, students will come in and finish or complete what they need to complete, and then they won't need to take it for second session. Also, because we did 3 Odyssey-ware classrooms this summer, we were able to bring kids in and offer them more classes than we would have been able to offer through Cyber High, because Odyssey-ware has more of an A through G platform. I don't know what word I'm thinking of, but it's better for them to take those classes. So they were able to take more than one class within that Odyssey-ware framework. So you may have had a student who came into Odyssey-ware and finished 3 different classes within that first session and then didn't have to come back again for the second session. So we did have the opportunity to bring kids in for that. Some of the challenges we had were in specific classes that we weren't able to offer because we just didn't have teachers to teach those specific classes.
All right, well, thank you. And again, thank you for a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Director Pugh.
Thank you. Also, great thanks for a great report. This is one of those things we like hearing it from each year because we know how it really benefits kids. It gets them excited. And while I haven't had the opportunity to view all the things that you do, I always try to make it a time to see Matt Davis work his Maker program. And I will tell you, when those kids or you shoot off that rocket, these kids' eyes are huge, and they try to figure out why did one go higher than the other, and why did one veer off and didn't. David, you know, Matt, you are a great teacher, and the kids really benefit from it. And I think, quite honestly, you change lives. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I just have to publicly commend Teaching and Learning under the direction of Dr. Guzman and Steve Mazzara in Special Services, Assistant Superintendent, and this team of absolutely passionate educators who see what needs to happen for kids. And I can guarantee you, Director Fong, that it's going to grow. The work that they're doing during the regular school year in terms of curriculum, teaching, all the things that they're working so hard on, we're going to see this push forward and the numbers will reduce. I guarantee it. I'll put money on it. The other thing I wanted to say, so thank you guys. Awesome. The other thing I wanted to do or to say was that, because I think this is really interesting, wonderful, since the board knows some of the struggles in terms of construction at Montgomery and woodshop cabinetry at Santa Rosa High. Both of those, this year, both of those courses were not full FTEs. But as the year started and as the students came and we got the numbers up, both teachers, Mr. Costello and Mr. Gifford, are both full-time. I think that's absolutely wonderful that those courses are full-time courses. Our numbers are up in manufacturing as well at Santa Rosa High, across the board. Our CTE numbers are up. And so, again, I couldn't be more happy about that for our students, our staff, and actually our community.
Thank you, that is good news. Well, thank you very much for your great report and your efforts. It's exciting because I've been on the board, this is my 6th year, and every year really the PowerPoint is longer, there are more pictures, there are more programs, there are more numbers, and I know you're ambitious and you want to continue to grow it, so that's really exciting. I had the pleasure of going to the Mike Hauser Academy graduation, which is really special. It's such a great, amazing partnership and program, and the kids benefit from it so much. And then also the art and mariachi show at the end of that camp, and which is wonderful. And I love the art show every year, and I always want to buy some of the art, except for the art that I want to buy, someone has already purchased or it's not for sale. And so I have an idea for you, and that is that Becoming Independent, that does art shows, their organization, they then do prints on, they make packs of greeting cards and sell them, and apparently make decent money because that art is fantastic. So just a little entrepreneurial idea there for you, but it's really great program, so thank you, and thanks for all your work and report tonight. Okay, F5, discussion item, annual attendance, project sale, and Elevate Academy update.
Board member, President Close, board members, and Superintendent Kitamura, thank you for our president allowing us to present today and follow up that wonderful summer school momentum. And we hope to kind of give you a little bit of an idea of one of the last comments was about how to decrease the numbers and improve recovery of credits in advance of failing credits. And we think our components in the Elevate Academy and the attendance pieces that we're going to show you today are one of the strengths that we're doing. So with me today is Patty Turner, our director in our SAFE office, and Daisy Hernandez, one of the people that Patty will discuss later in our Elevate Academy.
Good evening. We are so pleased to be here this evening to discuss some of the pieces that we have coming from our Project SAIL grant. It is a 3-year grant and will expire at the end of June of 2020. The focus is mainly on that chronic absenteeism percentage rate. Very important to us, as it is very important to the state. We will strive to provide excellent resources and strong training at our sites so that we can make them more independent and in the work that we do for attendance. Our SAIL family mentor, Stacey Hernandez here, is one of our members. Will be one of our key players with another 2, perhaps another 3. To help at the sites, we have feeder patterns that they work with, and they will be closely working with families so that to support and provide services that may be needed. And then, absolutely, we will be promoting our Elevate Academy on those Saturday sessions and see how we can reduce our numbers in the attendance absences and also recover them.
So one of the main components of the Project SAIL attendance improves learning is that there is a emphasis on what is called chronic absenteeism. I'll discuss that in a second, but chronic absenteeism is absences that are greater than 10%, and it includes a much broader amount of absences than normally parents may be used to under truancy guidelines. We have framed that 10% in something very similar. You may have seen this as the color scheme on our 5x5 from the California State Dashboard. So similar to that, we're trying to mimic with parents so they understand the same kind of movement. Red is obviously needs a severe improvement, and blue is the excellent. And so we're mimicking that in this scale here as we develop the letters and the other conversations that Ms. Turner will describe in a moment.
This is a nice slide as it defines a little clearer that chronic absence definition. And we're looking at the excused absences, and in examples, those are the ones that parents called to clear their sickness and or they're even better, verified medically. Or the personal, maybe the emergency at home. But in addition to the excused absences, we are including the unexcused absences. And those are your cuts that no one called to let us know what was going on. Also those non-medical. And that's gonna be a broader range that we are considering, not so much as a personal, but our family vacations during the school year. That will be now considered a non-medical. It's not excused. There's no reason for them to miss school, so it is considered in that category. With this number, we also include our suspensions, those that are sent home, those students. And with that, you have the total of the chronic absenteeism percentage of 10% or more. This is different, I want to note, from truancy. Those students that are truant because of the cuts, they're unexcused, and then they are going through the process of the truancy with the letters that are provided on a weekly basis. And again, this is different from the ADA, which is your average daily attendance.
Just to add a quick point there, it's important to understand that chronic absenteeism is a percentage amount of days that have been there. So if you were already absent the first month of school and you took 3 or 4 days off, you're already chronically absent. That doesn't mean you're like that for the rest of the school year, but you would trigger that initial 10% chronic absenteeism. So it's very important to do that, to understand that. And there are more codes that trigger that, and that's the other big piece here that we're moving forward on. So looking at our data and where we are currently. So the 16-17 data, certified means it's been posted from CalPADS to DataQuest, and that's what you could see online. I want to make note that last year there was a discrepancy in reporting secondary period absences through DataQuest, through our new Illuminate system that has been resolved. So that glitch of 49.5 is not accurate, and we knew that later in the spring we had revised numbers. So what we're doing at this point, data is not yet certified through CalPADS. PalPads and through DataQuest. So from our numbers internally, we have run those numbers from last year's data. And we show that we are 11.1% at the elementary level had chronic absenteeism, that's 10% or higher, 18.8 at the Santa Rosa High School, that's secondary, that's middle and high. And then you see the averages from the year before for Sonoma and the state. And we must know that we expect the Sonoma percentage to come down. Our 49% also raised the county average as well. So we want to make that when we see the certified numbers coming out later this year.
Taking those same numbers, we took our basic grid, color grid, and divided it into those sections that now also the state is emphasizing, less than 5, between 5 and 10, or less than 10, excuse me, and then 10 and higher. The color columns are a representation of our schools, elementary, middle, and high. And I want to emphasize again that the state is only emphasizing in the chronic, the last set of columns. We showed you this chart last year when we did our presentation of SAIL. I want to kind of emphasize one piece in particular, besides the outside surrounding of the pyramid, that we are, because of our family mentors this year, we are definitely focusing that support in case management, but also we want to grow that Elevate Academy at the other end to motivate more attendance recovery and absences being removed from the students who need to have those removed. But on that green band, it says positive letters and messages with update on missed days. This is going to be a new component that we've kind of brainstormed over the summer and have created, and we'll show you more on our next slide. With that messaging piece, this is a chart, and what I did is we divided the year into basically 3 weeks. You see the dates on the very left-hand corner, and then the school days that those attached to, and then the type of message method that we're going to pursue. The voice text will be a parent link, and they will be reminding students, for example, on that 32, September 28th, we are hoping to have that as a solid date. Those students that received 1 absence or 0, they will receive a message indicating, congratulations, we are so pleased with your success, blah, 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 English and Spanish. Those students who have achieved 2 or 3 days missed will receive a different message, motivating to do better. And then the last column with 4 or higher will receive a different message. As you go down on those dates of the calendar, some of them actually fall on report card grading. And those will be a written, allowed a little bit of, as he called it, property on the report card to be able to express, again, a good message, a warning message, or chronic, depending on the day's absences. And we will follow that all along till the end of the year.
Moving on to just our totals from various attendance goals last year. So this is just end of the year data that we keep internally. This is not necessarily the same things that are reported to the state. And so we have truancy letter 1s and truancy letter 2s. Those are generated by our offices. The next set of the cycle is that if someone's attendance is continuing to be troublesome and lacking, the school site sets up individual meetings with the family. And if it doesn't improve, it goes on to what is called a SARB. And so this is just data from the various schools. We want to also make sure we note that obviously there are a lot of things that impacted our total data and our numbers compared to year. We obviously lost time with the fires, and we also had a new student information system that required us to kind of get up to speed on making the automated letters. So going forward in the future, when we articulate these numbers, we're gonna have to perhaps put something like a baseball asterisk. This was an interesting time period for us, that we have to watch that not all these numbers necessarily should be compared apples to each other. What we do want to emphasize, as we go to the next page here for secondary, is that we're also in the middle of putting some stronger and better systems in place. You will obviously note that there are a few gaps in some of these processes. We have spoken with administrators at those school sites and understanding and working with the systems to create improvements in that process. In fact, that's an example of Ms. Hernandez here and what she does. It's that part of the project sale, her job is to connect with an administrator that's in charge of attendance, an attendance tech at either elementary, middle, or high, and make sure they understand the system, what the process is, what the forms are, and then we'll be monitoring those things on a regular basis just to make sure that those the numbers remain the same if they're solid and improve if they need improvement.
Here we have our results for Elevate Academy on this last 2 years, and you see the first row. We do have more sessions this last year, from 11, the previous to 16, and then along the rest of the columns, I did divide it with the elementary, middle school, and high school, just to see a little where the differences remain. I want to congratulate one school in particular. Our first session is starting this next Saturday. Very different to last year where we started the 2nd of December. So starting earlier in the year, Helen Lehman will be the one to open up our session for the Elevate Academy. And, you know, hooray if Alyssa's still here.
Yeah, she is.
Yay, girl. More students have been participating in the program, as you can see with the numbers, and we were able to recover as well more student numbers. Another huge change is the participation of the high schools. A lot more teachers are believing in the program and are utilizing it for further curriculum and growth. Many of them are dance teachers, so they're developing those movements for their shows and using that time nicely. And students are enjoying that time with the Saturday program.
So just a second, just a reminder, because I kind of heard a little bit of whispering. This is, if you remember, we embarked on this 2 years ago. This is enrichment and attendance recovery on Saturday. And so that's what Elevate Academy is.
Yeah. Our expectations this year, we have made many changes already, especially improving the documentation in Illuminate Ed with recording. We have a Tuesday meeting, and this is new news for them as well, but we've allowed an opportunity to be able to put down labels of home visits and be able to count them at the end of the year. The parent start meetings, a piece that was vague in our documentation. We have a place now to record those in Illuminate Ed, and then other letters such as truancy letter 3s and so forth. Also, filling another area of void is, and it was requested by one of the administrators, is, Patty, can we get an alert, some type of report where it alerts us, especially after those students receiving the second letter. Who do we start? And this will be accessible to all the sites and admin, where they can just go to the report, and here's your list of 6 students. Let's get those scheduled with parents and move to the next level. Again, that parent meeting with the admin at the site is critical. It could either stop the attendance problem there or not if it does not exist. So that is very crucial. Again, an alert maybe who does the letter 3s. Here's the group of students. Or who's next to refer them to the SAR process of district. So those little alert reports are going to be wonderful for all of us. And, I'm sorry, go ahead.
As we're wrapping up and discussing next steps, so we know that we have to continue the relationship that we build with our attendance people to make sure they understand systems and have systems in place. Daisy's and her other mentors are important roles in that work. We also are making sure we're thinking past grant. This is another 2 years of grant. The idea is to make sure that we have systems and processes in place and people are trained, and that's the importance of our family engagement people and our attendance team, and that the SARTs and the other meetings we're having are following up. What we plan to do is we'll provide information as an information item in February, just to show you our mid-year results, just to make sure that we're on track to provide the services that we say we're going to provide. And with that, we'll open up it if there's any questions to the board.
Thank you. Oh, student board member.
I actually had a few questions. So I noticed that the increase in the Elevate Academy was just in high schools. And actually from my own experience, I feel that in part that was because of the fires and making up for those times. So I was kind of just wondering if you have a plan to maintain those connections made through the fire with Elevate Academy.
We probably have a couple of ways that we're maintaining connections through fire. So our administrators know, we have students documented in the system who was affected by the fire, and we have ways that we're developing kind of cross-referencing. As an example, we're working on cross-reference of student that was affected by a fire that's also an attendance issue. And so we can now in our Illuminate data cross-reference those and really target, okay, hey, this is a student that was affected by the fire. That's another flag for another set of resolutions and what we do with it. That might be different than that. So that's one way I think we're doing it.
And then also I was just wondering, do we have an idea of the number for the 49.5%, what that is approximately now?
Yeah, the number we present, so we think that is in our data, and again, it's uncertified, it's not through CalPES, I think it was 18.8.
Okay.
And that's a combination of middle school, which I think was 14 or 15, and high school that was 21.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just ask a clarifying question? So 18.8 says 17, 18 uncertified, but the 16, 17, is that all, that's also 18.8? Our best estimate, or do we really not?
We did not have that number at all.
And there's no way to go back and figure that out?
Oh, maybe there's a way. It's part of the older data system, and I'm not sure.
I feel like we should have a song for when Rick walks down.
Is it, brother? You need your come down song.
Approximately, I believe, 49.5% that was reported in the previous year. We as a data team, and the same with Steve's number that's uncertified, could not replicate that number using what we would think would be the CVE's algorithm, but our estimate of the actual number was in the low 20s, if I recall correctly.
It would be helpful to have that, just kind of an estimate, or even maybe the year before, just so we have something to look at that's closer. Thank you very much for that explanation. Director Carl.
Thank you. Two good questions, and a student board member. I had the same concerns. Do I understand then within excused absence, which fits within the getting up to 10%, that there will be some number in 17, 18 that relates to fire survivors that were not in school for some period of time? How is that accounted for in any fashion?
It'd be no different than any student. So obviously our attendance didn't count against them for everybody that was out. But
well, clearly, but once it came back in, do we have any way of tracking that at all in terms of whether any of these numbers are elevated to some extent because of that?
Again, that could be part of the cross-referencing that we do. Again, that's last year's data. So we'd have to cross-reference the fire victims with their numbers of attendance and absences. So it is available. We haven't produced numbers yet on that.
Can we also cross-reference, because we add three things, excused absence, unexcused, and suspensions. I'm concerned about the unexcused personal vacations and things like that. And when I look at numbers like in the middle school, the highest one is Herbert Slater. So that seems counterintuitive, except when you start thinking about, is this where our higher socioeconomic folks are, and so they're taking more vacations. How much of this is parents making decisions just to take kids out of school because our spring break doesn't fit their spring break or whatever it happens to be? Do we have data that can separate that kind of thing?
I mean, the first part, you're right. There are some mindset differences here. And that's one of the goals that the state is now identifying, to understand this is not just about truancies and families that fail to call in. This is about a greater picture of your missing school days for whichever reason. The only thing that does not count for this is You're participating in school, you're participating on school business, and you are at school today. So the state has obviously taken a different emphasis, and this is going to be a change of mindsets for many families. And the point that we're trying to intertwine into that is there's a lot that happens at school. It's not about getting a packet anymore and doing 30 math pages while you're at Disneyland, coming back and turning that in. For all the reasons you've heard here about engagement and things that we're doing, you can't make up highly engaging classes anymore, and that's a different reality. I think the state is recognizing that, and I think that's why they're pursuing that. So that is likely to create a, hey, what's this about? This is a different mindset, and I think that's the first layer of what that data will do.
Yeah, and it's not only in middle school. If you look at the elementary school, 2 of the top 4 are charter schools, which have the highest parental involvement, and you know, a choice being made by parents that this is a place that they want to go because they highly value the education that they can receive there. And yet when you look at the truancy letters, they're 2 of the highest 4 in the elementary school. So there seems to be a miss there, and I'm trying to understand that if we've got a better parent education program that's necessary, but that seems to be, I mean, it's glaring.
I agree, and those parent communications are necessary. That's why we talked about all the voice messages and report cards, and we're really gonna spend a lot of time getting that information out. And it starts with baseline numbers. How many letters do we have prepared to send out on our baseline letters?
Last year, or?
No, the ones that you were doing in your class. Yeah.
This first session?
Yeah.
443.
No. So we're sending out, Daisy knows the number. What's the number, Daisy?
It's 5,400.
So Daisy, I caught Daisy in the parking lot with our letters that we're sending out to parents about their first baseline numbers. So they're getting their first shot of what that looks like and what the concerns will be. And what's that number, Daisy?
5,419.
So many of those will perhaps for the first time get a concern that you have missed chronic absenteeism with a letter, see your principal, discuss with your attendance person, here's this new process. So that was baseline data from last year, and now as we move forward, then on that timeline, we'll be getting real live data, the inputs, the positive messages, and everything from there.
And that's K-6.
Okay.
Just one note. As you're looking at this truancy, and you were mentioning, you know, those taking vacations and things, that has nothing to do with that. This is just people who are not excusing their absences.
So what's happening? Why in a charter school, which presumably has greater parental involvement, and we hear about that, are the 2 of the top 4 in the elementary school? That doesn't make any sense to me.
We will find that after this year of data. I mean, that's really
and then why is Helen Lehman so way out? Now, I really appreciate that you're going after that one first, but is there any explanation as to why that's so much higher than anybody else?
Come down. While Lisa's coming down, or Principal Haley's coming down, the other added piece to this that the State Board of Education just passed is that chronic absenteeism for K through 8 will be a part of the college and career readiness indicator, along with seal up by literacy and military science.
And I think that's relatively important because a lot of parents don't see the consequence associated with it, because they take kids on vacation or do whatever they're going to do, and they do get the packet, so they, you know, make sure the kid does all the things they were supposed to do. And yet this is a key indicator of problem areas.
Right, and it's
and it goes to ADA as well.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, if we've got anything in this district that we've learned over the last 15, 20 years, is we don't have enough money. And we talk about the need for that from the state, but if we get ADA up here, it has an impact, and we can solve a lot of issues if we have that. So it's a public education issue that you're impacting your son or daughter, but you're also impacting everybody else in the neighborhood and everybody else in the city. And so that's from a public education standpoint, I think reasonably important. Back to Lehman.
This is just my own opinion, sorry. No official data, but sure. So with the different climates, some of our parents are scared, right. So they do keep their kids home. Yeah. And also with a lot of parents do end up going back to Mexico, taking their families because of emergencies, and sometimes we can excuse them, sometimes we can't. If they're gone 2 weeks, we can't excuse them.
Yep.
We don't do the independent studies. The laws around it have changed, so it's very different, and so we're really holding, our site has been very diligent in really following the codes, the laws, and whether or not we can give independent study. So those are part of it. I mean, it could be because they love Saturday school so much, I don't know.
Somehow I get that, but, all right. Well, you know, it's been a chronic problem. I've seen it year after year after year. We have some teachers that say, hey, why can't you get this together? And I don't think it's for lack of trying, but I appreciate the increased data analysis, and I think some of the things that I asked about, I'd be interested in understanding some breakdowns with respect to that too. And in the end, maybe we need a greater public education impact from our district about what impact it has on success, and what impact it has on the community as a whole as an educational system. We have a responsibility, not just to each of our kids, but we've got a responsibility to the community as a whole. And you know, whether that resonates with people, I don't know, but obviously anything that we can do to increase those would be helpful. Thank you.
Director, actually, real quick, I mean, one thing that I do want to point out is that Helen Lehman is also really big, and it would be helpful when we have these numbers to have in a raw number as well as a ratio,
yes.
So we can compare it to school size, because that is also a factor.
Yeah. Yes, well said. Yes.
Director Anderson.
That's true, and I would point out that the least number of absences is also a charter school, and 0 is 0, no matter what the percentage. And our student board member could probably speak to this even better than I, but basically I think it comes from the style of instruction, because you really cannot miss a day there, because you can never make it up. So that's just something to consider, I think, when you're looking at how do we get kids to come to school. You make it so that they don't want to miss school and they feel that they can't miss school. And I mean, I'm going to plead guilty that in our regular public school, we saw so many days of, hula hoop contests that, especially around holidays, that we would take our kids out and go on a trip because, hey, it's Hawaiian Day, that means we're going to have a hula hoop contest, and it was not worth going to school for. So just saying that sometimes what's happening in school also impacts how the parents think. But I do have a question. How do you classify college visits? Like, are those excused absences or unexcused absences?
They're a field trip?
No, when a student needs to go and visit a college or get an interview for a scholarship or that sort of thing, how do you classify
In the attendance, that would be considered school business.
School business.
School
so
business.
It's an excused?
In a sense, it's excused.
It's excused.
But they need to make sure that they're correctly reporting it in the office. They need to show up to school and say, this is where I'm going to be.
Well, if they have to fly somewhere, they might not be able to show up.
And there's going to be kind of proof of that too. I mean,
Okay.
if kids going,
So like if they have an agenda for the day,
exactly,
they can show it to the school.
exactly.
Okay.
Or it's worked through the school, or the teacher knows that these students are doing these visits. It is considered school business, but it does need to be verified.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Director Fong.
Thank you. Thank you for that report. It's a multi-pronged approach to a very complex issue, and I appreciate the robustness that you have done this with. The phone calls and letters to the parents and, levels, all good, and the data, really great. But I want to talk a little bit more about policy and attendance. So when the failure rate goes up, and teachers and administrators know about this, it's the teachers generally will say, and it's true, I agree, that they can teach who's in the classroom. So chronic absences affect student learning, and teachers could stand on their heads, and if the kid's not there, right? You're saying a little bit, Director Anderson, that it kind of depends what the teacher's doing that day. So there's, there's two sides of the story too, right? So, I've seen all of it. But let's talk a little bit more about not what you're doing, because you're on one side of it, looking at the chronic absences, but looking at the other side of it, of attendance, and what are the barriers to kids coming to school? What is keeping students from coming to school? So when we looked at summer school, the kids probably didn't want to miss summer school. It was exciting, it was engaging, it was hands-on, it was project-based. Where are we doing that whole scale in our schools and in our classrooms? We're doing it here and there with many teachers, but not across the board. And so how does that affect attendance? And then how does poverty and how does trauma affect student attendance? And we've seen lots and lots of that with all the kids begging to go to home and hospital, when really that's not the place they should be. But they just can't, they're too anxious to be in school. So how, we're working on that. And it's many steps, of course, but we're working on that in this direction, we are supporting. Why do we have school completely during a traditional cultural holiday when so many of our kids go out of the country? Why do we have school during that time and just expect that they're going to be here every year? So how are we responsive to our community? I would say we're not if we punish them and say they're chronically absent, because there goes their 20 days right there, right? Or 18 days or over 10 days. So I think there are many barriers to attendance, and I want to support us looking at those ways that we support attendance, different ways to deliver education, different times to deliver education, different whatever, to support attendance. This is necessary, but maybe it won't be so necessary if we work on the other side of things. My speech, as usual.
Thank you, Director Fong.
Thank you, Director Fong. Anybody else? Student board member.
So with Elevate Academy, are those days that are then like made up for their absences, is that also in effect for excused absences?
Yes, it covers both absences. So family vacation could be made up on the Saturday attendance, as an example.
Okay. Thank you very much for, did you just say, for the very important and thorough report and all your work on this. This is huge. It's really important for our students' education, as you know, for our finances, and I echo what a lot of my colleagues said. I don't want to repeat it all, but it is kind of about district and school culture, and how engaged are the students and how aware are the parents of the importance of attendance. I agree with Director Fong in terms of scheduling around if we have a holiday that many of our students are missing, not unlike, when I lived in LA USD has all of the Jewish holidays off because otherwise half the school would be gone. That's specific to that population, and that was important to take that into consideration. So all the things we can do to get kids in school and every day is great. So thank you for your efforts.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, and that brings us to F6, discussion item, program update, after school education and safety grant, the ACES program.
President Close, board members, and Superintendent Kitamura. I want to bring to you now an update on our ACES after-school education and safety program. As you all are aware, we had a new contract and new vendor that started our program this year that we went through a process with last year. Some concerns were raised both by our administrators and by parents and staff members that came to us last week. We promised you an update on what we're doing with it and where we want to move forward. So what I first want to just outline is just a quick brief summary of how we got to where we are, and that was through the first time a competitive bid process that we have not had before. We've been using the same vendor for over 5 years, and we felt it was important to go out to bids. We had a team of school leaders that evaluated those bids. We awarded that bid to the company Creative Brain. We worked with them during the summer to go through implementation concerns and data and communication out to families. We implemented beginning on August 15th, the first day of school. Concerns were expressed right away from site administrators, and then later from there from parents and staff members as well. We heard some of those concerns last board meeting. We are here to kind of talk a little bit about the review of contract and where we are with a couple of things, and we'll obviously have some presentations by administrators that are living this on a daily basis. With me I also have Araceli Romo Flores, a director in Title I programs, and you'll see is Ms. Alyssa Haley's here, and Julian Zott, also from Burbank.
Good evening. So I'm just going to share an overview of what's happened over the last few weeks. We've had many conversations, both formal and informal, with parents, principals, staff, Creative Brain, and we've also had meetings to review expectations with Creative Brain and also with our principals. We developed an improvement plan that we've developed collaboratively. We did create a document where we wanted to monitor the program and just assess it on a daily basis. And I'm going to show you some slides of that in the next slide. But the principals have been entering their data, their information as they've been assessing the program on a daily basis to just see how it's been going. And we also had follow-up meetings to just revisit those concerns with the Creative Brain. We met with them on 2 occasions, on August 31st and September 7th. And we also, Steve and I have made some site visits to see the program in action. And I have to say, I do want to publicly commend our principals and our teachers and our classified staff because they really have stepped it up. These are our kids. We don't just say, okay, it's 3 o'clock, they're now yours. I really appreciate the support and effort from all of our staff members that have stepped it up and just come in to support in any way possible to make sure that our students are safe and that their needs are being met. And so I also want to thank Creative Brain because they have met with us continuously, and we have they've been open to our concerns and are aware of our concerns, and so I want to thank them for that. I am going to share with you some information that we gathered. The principals were recording on a daily basis how the safety procedures were happening in terms of sign-in and just overall safety of the students. And you can see the scale. The scale is unsafe. 1 is unsafe, inadequate, and number 2 needs improvement, and 3 is satisfactory. And so we definitely, when we reviewed this information, we definitely understand and recognize that we're not where we want to be. And and that you can see that the safety and sign-in has gone up and down, and really that's kind of a result of the workforce. It's been really hard. It's been a challenge for Creative Brain and to get fully staffed, and we're kind of suffering the same situation as a district. I know I've had a hard time hiring some of the instructional assistant positions, so I know that the workforce is a challenge right now. But I'm pleased to report, and the principals will probably be sharing this as well, that we are making some strides and we are making some gains, taking baby steps in the right direction. When we met as principals, the last meeting that we had, some of the principals that were there when we switched from the YMCA to Boys and Girls Club. I was one of them. Just we're reminiscing about the growing pains that we suffered back then. You know, it wasn't a smooth transition. It wasn't perfect. There were definitely growing pains when we went from YMCA to Boys and Girls Club too. So it's kind of what we're experiencing now. We need to recognize that there are going to be growing pains, but we are taking steps to improve it, and daily it has gotten a little bit better, and so we're glad to see that it's moving in the right direction. We're going to have our principals share out their experience with the program. This slide talks about, it's not current, so it's not accurate. It changes almost on a daily basis because Creative Brain is actively recruiting and trying to hire staff, and so the staffing has changed daily, and also our student enrollment is fluctuating as well. So these numbers, I just want to be transparent, are not accurate. They are constantly changing. But I do want to share the sample activities, some of the things that are happening at some of our sites, and what we are still expecting to see.
Good evening, I'm Julian Shaw, principal at Luther Burbank Elementary School. Creative Brain program, when it started at the school, was quite disorganized, and so I think the concerns raised were real and they were valid. So in the last month, I've met with Eckert, the director, once, and with Ralph, their senior supervisor, several times to see what improvements we could make, and to their credit, they've been quite responsive. So Ralph has been on campus several times. He's invited Sue, one of his senior supervisors, to come and train his staff. He's also made a staff change at my request, which was needed. The snack program's been enhanced with a hot lunch or a hot meal program, and the care and control is improved considerably. But there's still a lot of room for growth in the areas of student transitions, providing interesting and differentiating activities for the kids because of the different ages of students that are there and the numbers that are there. Of accounting for the students still. We're still working on an accurate roster. And you know, to their credit, they're making some growth. So at this time, I guess I'd recommend we continue with Creative Brain, and I'll continue working with their staff to make the changes and to see improvements.
So I'm going to first just address the fact that I think that we were in a different shift where we really weren't following our ACES grant, where it says, you know, providing our students with a certain amount of time, because I know a lot of our students, and we get out at 2:16 and they would stay there, and at 3:15 they'd leave. So we weren't really following in the past. I will admit I was on the committee, and when I saw what they were going to provide our students, I thought, I want that for our kids. I want our kids to learn music. I want our kids to guitar, art, STEM. I want actual homework help. It was like, you know, just everyone would want that for their kids. So yeah, it's been a big growing pains. I'm very fortunate because some of my staff have stepped up, and they actually now are my yard duties, and some of my instructional assistants actually work now in after school. So they know our kids, and they care about our kids, and that's another reason why they did it. And so my head person is fantastic. We had an issue. She remained calm. She knew exactly what to do, and she immediately let me know. And I was very impressed. And I, in my mind, thought, wow, I hope I would be that calm. So it was really, I was very, very happy. Our check-in, check-out is very strict because I'm quite anal retentive. So we work together because student safety is first. And so as we keep going, I know my kids are safe, and that's a main concern. And as we keep going, they're getting homework help, they're getting other activities. So we will keep growing together. Yeah, just looked at. And we will be getting all those exciting activities. I know it.
I just want to echo Araceli's point that she made about the teachers stepping in, and wanted to thank the teachers who did step in, provide a lot of support for the Creative Brains staff and care and control of the kids and providing a safe environment for them. So that was really important in the first week, 2 weeks when the program began.
And Araceli and I also had chances to visit. I was at Monroe last week and saw a first musical day there where they had 10 keyboards and instruction that lasted an hour. They were moving a rotation through different cycles. They had a wonderful structured program about homework. We're communicating with the teachers already about who has homework and who's what, and they wouldn't let kids say, I don't have any homework, because they knew already. So they're beginning to make those bridges. And again, similarly, that was the result of an outstanding coordinator. Last night I was at Lincoln, a little in advance of the show starting, and they were just wrapping up a full robotics program that they had done, and they did 4 hours, because you can imagine they're done at 12 o'clock. So on the back to school nights, it's a real big challenge for the program, and Creative Brain had some other additional things they put in. So I saw these little robotic jumper things they were doing, and had that, and I understand they had that at other places as well.
Yes, I also observed the robotics at Biella, and the students were super excited. They created little mini bots and were showing me how they worked, and they were super excited about it. So that was nice to see.
So moving forward, we're in discussion about with another vendor, YMCA, to see if there's anything we need to do to have them come into the program. We initiated some conversations about middle school. Araceli and I had a long meeting with them today, and getting back to the workforce issue, they have concerns about stepping in themselves and being able to cover any of our sites. They, at this point, are not going to commit to a contract yet. We're still going to come back to that and see if we can develop it. We are in a place where we have serious workforce issues at the low wage classifications. You'll see that in other presentations. And to think that there's a magic solution out there in some other organization that can bring that in, YMCA says they do not have that capacity at this time to pick up that contract. So based on that information, we're going to continue that conversation. We're going to discuss with them how to make the best of that. We're interested in just making sure whatever configuration works appropriately. But at this point, and based on the feedback from the principals, that we're going to be recommending that we continue with Creative Brain, a very short leash. We continue to work with them. We are absolutely not satisfied with their meal program, and I know they've made some steps to talk to Food Bank, and I don't know when the implementation of that is, but I know they're going to be doing some things to change that. With those things in mind, if we do make any adjustments, we'll bring that to the board right away. And if we hear of any mid-course corrections that are necessary, we'll come right to you to make sure you guys are aware of those. And with that, we'll turn any questions to the board.
Director Carl.
Under next steps, the first one says bring revised contract on September 26th. What does that mean?
At the time of this writing last week, when we put this together, we were discussing the YMCA to come forward to take over, possibly take the contract for the middle school program.
Okay, so my interest is who's looked at the Creative Brain contract and figured out whether they have been living up to it and what they owe us in return. You guys have spent an amazing amount of time. The principals have done an amazing job. The teachers that have stepped up to deal with things is amazing. I feel like we as a district got sold a bill of goods. We asked at the time, do you have the staff? Can you get people in here? Can you make this work? Because the program that was provided to the committee excited the committee. I mean, it was exceedingly clear when it came forward between the various vendors which one we should use. But they need to understand that at least this board member, and I suspect most board members, if not all board members, aren't going to stand for it and aren't going to stand for our staff having to augment, spend their time and energy when they've got plenty of other things to be doing. And I appreciate, I don't know if I read you properly or not, Julian, but when you said, at this time I'm recommending that it move forward, there wasn't really a wholesale endorsement, and I can understand why. I'm not going to put that on you, but it certainly seems that that's the case, and I think that's a pretty universal feeling within the district as a whole. So I'm not happy. I'm exceedingly happy with our staff. but I'm not happy with what Brain has done here, and I want to understand, what we can do to, number one, have them live up to it. What is a default that they've had up to this particular point? What does that cost them? And when you say short leash, I'm right there on a short leash. These are our kids. These are our kids that deserve the kind of thing that we all thought that we were going to get. And if there was a Yelp for this, we ought to be, putting that out there. They ought to understand really clearly that if anybody asks us how it was, it's not going to work very well. So from a business model standpoint, they've got some work to do, but we've got to stand up for our kids, and our staff has done that. I want to know what we're going to do relative to that contract, and I'd sort of hoped that this revised contract on September 26th was that we were re-looking at what we were doing with Creative Brain, and maybe they had come to us and said, we haven't really lived up to what we've done here, and this is what we're going to do. So I'm interested in that. I'm interested in them coming forward, and I'm actually disappointed that we haven't heard from them, at least at the board level, that they recognize that they didn't give us what they said they were going to give us.
Thank you.
Director Fong.
Well, I can't top Director Carl. Agree 100% with everything he said, and this bears repeating. I want to thank both of you, Steve Mazzara and Araceli, directors, assistant superintendent, and our principals and our teachers who have really stepped up to rescue our students. Again, very disappointed. Thank you for being on it. It's past your school day. The teachers, I heard a teacher who told me she was staying in her classroom the whole time just to make sure that the kids were covered, and so that story is probably told over and over again. So, echo Mr. Carl.
Director Anderson.
Yeah, Director Carl certainly covered most of my points as well, and it really is, we're so fortunate to have the staff that we have that recognizes a need and then steps up to it. That's really heartwarming. And I'm just curious, since we're on the subject, in my experience, our district-run childcare has always been excellent, and I'm curious what it would take to expand that.
Well, the expansion of the current daycare program and the structure that we have is currently dependent on the salary structure and what we're able to offer and hire people, again, back to the workforce. We have wait lists at every site where we already have a full daycare program. We know there's a demand to increase our daycare program. We have the infrastructure. We do not have the entry-level employees. Assistant Superintendent Spector and I have proposed how to begin working with CSEA and our partner there to resolve that and increase that, but it's very complex because it's not just that classification, and it's custodians, and it's supervisors, cafeteria workers, and others. But that is what's holding us up, the ability to find workers. We've had positions that have been open for a year and we've not been able to find them. So we know of over 100 families that are on a wait list. If I could find the employees that they could have after-school care.
And I'm sure that there's also demand from even our district employees to have childcare for their own children.
Oh, absolutely.
And what is the financial profile of our district run? Do we come out ahead? Do we lose money on it?
We come out ahead. We come out close to $90,000 to $100,000 ahead in the current model.
It would be really nice to expand that.
We would love to expand it.
Okay, and then finally, I guess, just so for our own knowledge of what are the recruitment tools being used? Are we going to the JC? Are we talking to students that are coming out of, and do you have to be a certain age to to be a child care provider?
The daycare worker is a different kind of classification than the ACES program. That's kind of covered by the state, and he has to meet the same qualifications as a paraprofessional, which could be a little stricter. You don't need early childhood education units necessarily to be an entry-level daycare. We do want, obviously, people with experience. We've done everything from the local, the Craigslist, and we know that EdJoin is not necessarily the place. We've done ads before in newspaper, radio ads. I can't speak that we've done them immediately, but I know we have done done last year.
Creative Brain has gone to Sonoma State, and they've gone to the JC trying to recruit as well. I know they've made those efforts.
Okay, well, thank you for your efforts.
Director Sheffield.
Thank you. I don't want to echo too much of what has been said already, except the workforce. I mean, the question came up again and again and again when we sat down and spoke with Creative Brain, and when there was just an understanding that they were aware of what they had to do to deliver, and we continue to ask and continue to press. So I am extremely disappointed in that we are where we're at now. I just wonder if have we done a check-in this year with other districts that use Creative Brain to see, is this a fluke? Are they having this experience, you know, in the other schools that they operate in?
We have not done that. We did that last year in our reference checking, but we haven't done this year. And so,
okay. I would ask that we do that.
Sure.
That we just maybe there's something going on internally that we don't know as well.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, I think that was a pretty loud and clear message. I don't need to duplicate. I will say that this sort of feels reminiscent of our first experiences with the new bus contract, where we were told one thing and then it turned out to be something different. And it's taken a couple years for that to self-correct or to be corrected and resolved. And this is one that just can't take a couple years. We know that it's not just the education issues, but there are safety issues, and really commend the staff for stepping up, from, you know, teachers to administrators to everybody for doing that, and our classified staff as well. But this is obviously something that needs to be handled quickly, and it seems like you guys are on it. I appreciate your work. You know, the staffing problem at this price point is a problem countywide. It's a problem statewide, but right now, particularly in our city and our county, it's a real challenge. But they knew that. So keep up the good work, and hopefully we'll see some improvement soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. I'll take 5 minutes. Or you want to keep plugging? Okay, got something to do tomorrow, huh? Oh,
okay, F7, opening of school update.
Yes, good evening, President Close, members of the board, Superintendent Kitamura. We're excited to move into the end of the evening portion of tonight with the opening of school report. Every student, every possibility, no matter what. And as I've been listening this evening and reflecting, I've thought how powerful it is that we have already heard from our extended school year and the way in which people are coming together to support student learning. When we talk about the attendance, all of the people who are collaborating in very purposeful and intentional ways to ensure that learning is engaging and that we're addressing student need on a very micro and macro level, as my fellow Assistant Superintendent Missouri might share with us. And then we've also heard, even in just the last presentation, that we know that we can always get better in our practices. And so as we talk this evening about the opening of school, we're going to share some of those same themes with you. This purposeful collaboration of the departments that are even represented here around the table, as well as the colleagues in our district to support students. I also want to note that in previous board presentations or board meetings, we've heard from CSEA and SRTA about how this year's school opening, even knowing that we're coming off of the fires and that there's been transition in staff, that we still have vacancies, and that it was relatively smooth. It was a positive experience. And so we believe that this presentation will also demonstrate why that is. I want to direct your attention to this quote from Superintendent Kitamura. and it sounds so much better in her voice, but I'm going to read it out loud. We have much work to do as a district. No longer will student outcomes be predicted on race, differently abled, socioeconomic status, and/or the language spoken at home. Yeah. Speak to truth, how powerful that is. And that's our charge every single day. Not only from you as a board, our greater community, our parents and family, to ensure that every student has equity and access. And so we're going to talk about what that has looked like in regards to the opening of school. We know that students learn and achieve when adult practice changes. And adult practice changes when we are very clear about what quality instruction looks like and quality leadership to support that instruction in our classrooms. And so our leadership launch, there have been many years of this. This was my first experience in wayfinding our purpose. And it's really the opportunity for our leadership team to come together to really hone in on not only what is our purpose, but what that really means is why do we do what we do, and how do we do it intentionally to serve the needs of all students. And so Assistant Superintendent Missouri and Edson are going to talk a little bit more about what that actually looked like.
Thank you. Good evening, President Close, Superintendent Kitamura, and members of the board. As we go through this presentation, it's going to be a walkthrough kind of between the first day of August and the start of school up until today. Starting with the leadership launch that was just mentioned on August 2nd and 3rd, the entire administrative team was brought together, including classified and certificated management, including principals, VPs, APs, DO management staff, program managers, to really get together and chart the course for the year and set what our priorities are and look at where we've been. The thing about this year that was in particularly different is, one, there was a calmness in the room, there was active participation, there was a sense of trust in the room where there were open and honest conversations about where we've been, where we're at, and ultimately where we want to go through individual school sites as well as the district collective as a whole. As we went through it, there was many discussions about the student-centered policy changes that have occurred over the past 5 years, give or take, and a lot of reflection on that. We had opportunities to look at outcome data, showing exactly where our schools are at in comparison to other schools in the district, as well as comparisons to the county and state. A key point of this leadership launch was the ability for our administrative team to really look back over the course of the last 3 years with several of the initiatives that have been brought forward and discussed as a district, including coherence, incorporating the 5 questions, and as Assistant Superintendent Spector mentioned, the wayfinding charge. Really bringing some focus and direction to the path that we're taking as we move forward. And on the last couple of slides have been pictures of the activities that were spread out over the course of the 2 days held at the Lewis Educational Center.
Well, one of these pictures right here, interesting above you, show our principles. We call this slide the P2P, principles to principles. And so one of the things that we did is we focused on a couple of principles that we felt had successes with developing a culture, processes, and procedures that were successfully using coherence in their school systems, and develop that, and then share out amongst everyone kind of how those systems have been working and what that was about. We really focused on a lot of their due diligence around making sure that our system was operating effectively. And in our theme of the time, this is our wayfinders themselves helping each other find their way.
So in addition to the leadership launch that's supporting our current administrative team, which also included people who are new to positions or new to places in the district, we held a new teacher orientation, and you can see from the pictures that are represented here is all of the departments were represented and came together for sort of what we call one-stop shopping onboarding for our new staff. So imagine being hired into a district. Here's your contract. Great, you start. Okay, well, I need access to technology. Do I have, business cards? Do I have an email account? What systems do we use to share information with one another? Who do I go to if I just need supplies in my classroom? What type of curriculum am I responsible for when I'm supporting teachers or supporting students? This was our opportunity to share with them the way in which they can find their way with purpose and have support to do so from all of the departments and teams in the district. One of the things that we also did, as you can see, is we believe very strongly in modeling best practices. So when we expect, as Director Fong has mentioned several times today about engagement, if we expect engagement in the classroom, we have to model the same practices with our teachers and staff. And so we use a lot of pedagogical strategies and approaches that are interactive, that get people up and moving, that build from their place of strength. And so this was one of those opportunities for people to engage in a gallery walk after they had conversations about what does the evidence look like for them about what our theory of action looks like if we're going to disrupt those predictable outcomes that Superintendent Kitamura has talked about. In addition to that, our onboarding this year has been very specific to support administrators, not only new to the position, but new to the district, maybe change in a site. And so that has meant help in developing master schedules through an equity and opportunity lens for student need first. It has meant actually taking new administrators out to a site to let them know more about the community. And so, we might actually stop by the grocery store that's next to the school. And so they get to know people that, work there or at the gas station. So they're getting to know the community that they work in and serve. And then how do they leverage the resources and supports represented by our department so that they get what they need so that they can focus on student learning in their buildings. And so it was a very powerful experience. Hopefully for them and as well for us. And so with that, we also invited people to a breakfast for All Staff Welcome Back.
So All Staff Welcome Back was kind of an idea. Superintendent Kitamura had already kind of described a little bit in one of her reports earlier. But what that was is a way for us to kind of bring together our community partners, our union partners, businesses, local businesses, and bring everyone back in a kind of a welcome atmosphere and really share the kind of work that we're doing. Our departments were there to share their work. It was kind of just a great way to kind of start everything off and bring everyone back together. What we also saw, so there's a view from the 50-yard line. We are seeing not only just the strength of our community and over 1,000 of our community members, our staff, both CSCA and SRTA, but also the kind of the family that we were developing. This is, in our wayfinding words, this is our Ohana, and it was really impressive to see them, see us, have that direct conversation and visualize that. It was also a great way at the same time to show off our new field at Carrillo, which I think everyone really appreciated as well. And then for those of you that were there, in addition to great food that CNS was able to give us and presentations and important heartfelt conversations from President Close, Superintendent Kitamura, State Superintendent Mark McGuire, Tammy Alfonso, and Bill, Supervisor State Senator. Yeah, and then Will Lyon. We also were privileged to also be treated to a dance-off that is going to be of epic and historic proportions, no doubt.
One of the priorities of this day also was to provide concentrated professional learning time for staff members. And so as you can see from the slide here, it is what it is. There are times when we have to take our medicine and there are certain trainings that we are required to partake in. And so this was an opportunity to do that within the school day, in which staff were compensated for that, and they didn't have to do it after school, they didn't have to do it on the weekends, et cetera. Though I will say that our new staff who were onboarded had already had the opportunity to take some of these trainings, and so that also allowed them additional time with staff either in departments or grade levels or with their principals at site to get support as new staff on site. And in addition to SRTA and CSEA also having opportunity within the day to have orientation with their new members within the day, this was paid out of supplemental funds, and it was one of the 2 days that we've worked towards. So it's in addition to regular training and professional learning that they get. And again, the partnership with both organizations to help construct what this day looks like was another example of the partnerships that we're really working to strengthen.
So as we were wayfinding our way through these foundations, we did, on a foggy morning on August 15th, open up all 24 of our schools for over 15,000 of our students. And you can also see here that there was a lot of bond work that was done over the summer, and this is one of our digital marquees here shown at Helen Lehman Elementary School. Go Dolphins. You can see that also our teachers worked very hard to create welcoming environments for our students so that when they came to that first day of school, they were calm, content, and happy to be in their new communities. And you can also see here that as it wasn't just elementary school, but middle and high schools too were very welcoming as they came onto campuses as they began their first of their new year. I will say that it has already been echoed as we came back from that day and we had an opportunity to break bread and talk about what we saw. We heard from many people that it was a great start. They were happy, they were calm, and most people were happy to have that restart from some of the tragedies that occurred last year. So it felt very good to the start of the year.
So up until this point, we've really focused on the collaboration of teams to address the why of how we serve students. And so we're gonna transition a little bit into what does that actually look like in partnership amongst the departments. And it really comes from this idea that Assistant Superintendent Edson talked about earlier of that alignment and coherence. So as you can see, everything's nested because when we talk about meaningful learning in the classroom, is it relevant? Is it authentic? And we have to do that with our systems as well so that we're not disjointed in our learning or practice in the classroom, and we're not disjointed in our leadership practices in the organization. And so this sort of frames some of that work. And then in the next slide, the systems alignment and coherence that I just referenced, what does that literally mean to, quote, operationalize instruction with the intersection, collaboration, and partnership of the different departments to ensure that we're meeting the needs of students and our families and our staff each and every day. And so we're gonna share what some of that work looks like in the opening of our schools through that lens that you can see here. And so each of my colleagues at the table will share what that looks like in their departments, and hopefully you'll be able to see that connection.
Just like our students in the presentation previously had enrich opportunities, our teachers also were able to have the opportunity to have some summer professional learning in many different disciplines throughout KA through 12th grade opportunities. And so some good news as we look at not only the professional development for the implementation of the Common Core State Standards, but also some real wins. When we talk about our CCD units, which we have presented to you, by the end of this year, with some of the work that happened over the summer, we will have 90 units created by our teachers in KA through 12th grade. Which is outstanding when you think about this, teachers leading teachers doing the work for our students. Also some very rich math training regarding integrated math. I happened to meet with the high school principals last week with Director Goyle. She's overseeing math, science, and ELA. She's got a big lift. And we were talking about how it's going the first couple weeks of school and how things are going with implementation, specifically in math. And their collective share out was that they have less discipline issues coming out of 9th grade because of the heterogeneous grouping. And so that was really great to hear. As you know, we've presented, we do have an advanced learner plan. We also have an EL master plan. So we did have professional development opportunities in both of those areas. Part of our agreements last spring with our new graduation requirements were to extend our college and career centers. You will see that that'll be happening. We are going to have a survey that's going out in our newsletter so that we can get some feedback on what works best for our stakeholders and families. And lastly, the preliminary analysis of our 9th grade sections really indicate that we have more electives in CTE and in VAPA, and that's really exciting that our students are having more opportunities there. Here's a list of the professional development opportunities that were provided not only in my department also, but in Steve's as well. And so you can see a total of 355 teachers who were able to participate in the different offerings.
So what we're giving you a glimpse of now is our enrollment. My office says not just does attendance, but also does enrollment and open enrollment and transfers. And we know we've had conversations about declining enrollment. We're concerned about the loss of students. So this is just a snapshot of what we physically have seen in the schools between May and September. This is not a budget projection number. This is not a staffing projection. This is just the numbers that we are seeing. And so we certainly have some concerns. We're going to be looking at some of those nuances of where that's coming from. We've had to make adjustments because of it. We are in our process of adjusting to what that might mean for us in the future. So all that is just a moment to show that here's where we are, here's where today is, and tomorrow we have to begin to adopt on what that may look like. One of the areas in my department, the next area that we focus on is special education. I want to talk back to the coherent alignment in some of the summer training. We had some behavioral training called PROACT training to help students, teachers, help staff prepare for students that might need extra behavioral supports. And that is because we are bringing students back to our school sites that were not in our community. As you know, we have done a long-term reach out and build capacity to try to bring students back, and here's a significant portion where we are increasing students, in this case a total of about 38 students that were outside of our system, either County Office of Education or the Redwood Valley Consortium, and we're opening up this, slowly building up this program, and what we expect to do, of course, is to build this program up as our capacity develops. So we've brought in, this is just a glimpse of the teachers. We've had a total of 9 new special ed teachers, 5 new specialist school psychologists. We are finally fully staffed for school psychologists. We brought in 4 more speech and language pathologists. We are just a little shy, about 1 FTE shy there. We have added 1.2 FTE in school nurses. We have added APE, adopted PE, physical education, OTs, and we've added an additional program manager. All that being said, those additions and the savings that we're incorporating in our system still create a savings for us of over $560,000 just on those students. Money is not the factor. What is the factor is that they are on our campuses. For the first time, some of these families are walking to their home school they've never had a chance to do before. We are getting inclusive interactions and just amazing things that are beginning to happen between sites and things that are happening. Hat off to Dr. Wilson at Lincoln, who wholeheartedly wanted to take back some of those programs. And when concerns were expressed about having them at her school site, she says, I want to make it a hub. I want to make it a community. And she has done just that. I was there last night at their programs, and it is off to an amazing start. Challenges I want to outline. We still have challenges, not just in the workforce issues around structural aids and the lower salaries, but we have challenges with special education positions as well. And we are working through 2 vacancies right now that we hope to find ways to work through. As you know, part of the supports that we've done in our department is to add additional counselings. The Integrated Wellness Center is one of those examples. In addition to that, you all know that we have increased our counseling for school site counselors, PPS credentialed counselors at every school site. We've also increased our clinicians. Those are through SAY services. So our tiers of counseling support have been one of the strengths that we brought back. And as we talk about our Integrated Wellness Center, that's a place where Dr. Kimura mentioned in her opening slides, a place where families can go after hours, a place where we can focus on families that have been affected by the wildfire, and where we can give them a total integrated number of supports. Another strong thing in our department based through LCAP 2 goals is supporting E through G for the increased support and what we're called a multi-tiered system of support, TOSA. So as one of the developments that we approved last year in the LCAP is to create an expanding TOSA support to develop systems to track students and identify any ninth graders that may be struggling. The key to this is not just putting a spreadsheet together where those students are. We think that with all the supports that we've already mentioned before you, with the supports that we have been developing over the last 5 years, everything from our counseling, our restorative practices, our Best Plus, our family engagement, our family mentors, our soul counselors, our nurses we mentioned before, we have built the systems of support that we're ready to take this next step. This is not jumping off a cliff without supports. We have supports ready, and we think this is an additional way that we're going to support our school sites. That support means as our teachers are working with those students in their classrooms, the strategies that they are also using. So again, the coherence and the alignment of what we're doing in the teaching strategies that we have developed with the teaching and learning around our CCD units, around our Bay Area Writing Project, around our AVID strategies. Those are all examples of how we already have supports for our ninth grade. So I really want to just emphasize that we are putting this all together, but those pieces and those components have already been in place. Now we're ready to really activate that and track that and take it to the next step.
For the Business Services Division, and the opening of schools was a busy time, starting with facilities and maintenance operation. We completed approximately or just over $25 million in construction costs of roofing and HVAC projects at LC Allen, Monroe, Comstock, Carrillo, and Phase 1 of Santa Rosa High, to the point of substantial completion where there was minor cleanup and some small items to take care of as the school year started. As mentioned earlier, Carrillo High School held their first football game on their new synthetic field, and Pioneer High School had their first game under the lights a couple of weeks ago, as two other projects that completed this summer. And we're now starting the process, as we discussed in the August board meeting, of the next round of projects for the bond program to continue the progress that we've already made. In terms of M&O, there was a lot of work done this summer to make sure the campuses throughout the district were open and operable for the first day of school when staff and students returned. This was without significant challenge, with a workforce in M&O and the custodial ranks through injury and workers' compensation outages, as well as open positions that we cannot attract applicants for. That's an issue that we're dealing with as we're in the fourth week of school now, that we're continuing to deal with, and working with CSEA to find a resolution to help us move forward to provide adequate coverage at all of our school sites. Moving on to transportation, we talked about West County transportation a couple of weeks ago, and I can say that the service this year has significantly improved. We're in the process of putting together a board report based on the questions that were asked at that presentation that will be presented to the board on schedule for September 26th as an information item. West County, along with SRCS and many of their member districts, are continuing to look for ways to reduce costs, not only for us, but for the entire JPA, including routing assignments, as well as internally we're looking at bell schedules, but so is West County, for the ability to multi-tier the use of their buses throughout the member districts. The progress, I think, is admirable. The complaints that we're receiving in my office are few compared to previous years. At this point, I would say it's been a handful that have made it to my office for any route. General education routes have been virtually non-existent of complaints. There's been a few special education students that have had some issues, but I believe, and Assistant Superintendent Missouri can add if he'd like, have been corrected pretty quickly to the satisfaction of SRCS staff, the parents, and the JPA. So that's encouraging, the work that they're doing to make sure that the service continues in alignment with expectation. Moving on to CNS. I think the most significant thing to talk about with CNS is the online meal application and the success that we're seeing with that. I have a few numbers to share. Current year, we've processed 7,621 applications as of yesterday. Last year, at a similar point, we were at 7,370. 2016, we were at 7,322. In 2015, at the same point, we were at 5,872. CNS also sent out a mailer to approximately 2,500 families last week of students that were eligible last year but did not submit applications this year. So they're starting to see those applications come in right now. So we'll have a good chance of, between that outreach as well as additional applications coming in through the end of September, we may be able to hit around that 10,000 mark of applications submitted, which is huge for us. And please note that an application submitted doesn't necessarily mean that they qualify for free and reduced lunch, but it gives us a better chance of capturing all of our students who qualify so we can provide those services of food for those students. Moving on to purchasing and warehouse, the big thing here was we completed through the end of last year millions of dollars worth of orders that came in sometime between June 1st and the first day of school. And a lot of credit here to all the directors in business services, but to Kelly Cook and the work that she did personally going out to the warehouse, working on a reorganization plan to expedite entry of products, to expedite exit of products to sites, and putting in some checks and balances to ensure that sites were receiving their materials. It wasn't perfect by any means, but it was more perfect than it's been. And there's a lot of work that is still continuing to take place and will take place as those operations are streamlined to provide efficient service to our school sites. Moving on to technology, we've talked about this in August, but at the start of school, all of our school sites were on the new phone system. All the school sites had the bell clock speakers in place. We've rolled out the new phone system to the district office as well, with the exception of a couple of offices where some additional and special cabling, if you will, for challenging circumstances has to be completed. But with the exception of those few offices and locations at the district office, the entire district is on one phone system now. Which is a monumental task with a lot of credit to technology and Adrian Bika for the work that he did to ensure that it was successful. We brought on our 4 biggest schools this summer. And when staff showed up at school on the first day they reported, there was a new phone system. And there was still add move changes and some tweaks that had to be done through those first couple of days. But I would say it's gone relatively smoothly from the feedback I've received, as well as conversation with staff. Along the same lines as the phone system was the installation of the bell clock speakers. Like any technology, there always seems like there's an opportune time for it not to work. And the first day of school, we did have issues with the automation of the ringing of the bells due to a database error that was tracked down to a single site. No fault of the user. It was actually a bug in their system that we identified that they've since corrected. And now all bell schedules are operating automatically with the ability to customize for special day schedules, minimum day schedules as well. So that's really exciting from not only a operability standpoint, but also for enhanced communications among site and between sites, as well as building in some safety features with the integrated system of the bell clock speaker and the phone. We've talked about this at previous meetings. Now a principal or site administrator can go to any room and initiate a lockdown, a fire alarm, PA message across the campus in moments, rather than having to return to a single place on campus to do that. And last but not least, with technology and communications is the launch of the new website with, once again, I'll give a lot of credit to Beth Burke, who's sitting up in the stands, for the work that she did on that. We are now officially live, and if you go to our old web address, it redirects to the new website. So www.srcschools.org is now the official website of Santa Rosa City Schools.
So with that, we're going to talk about recruitment and hiring priorities. Several of these have been mentioned throughout the course of the night and in previous sessions. We know that nationwide, statewide, countywide, and here in our district, there are hard to fill positions, particularly in special education and math. Two quick stories. I was at Sonoma today talking with Professor Rajiv Vermanik, who is the chair of the math department and of the Department of Secondary, and we're working on a grant to support teaching cadres and cohorts, I guess we'd say. And he was sharing that he receives over 15 calls a day from not only here locally, but out of state for organizations saying, do you have math teachers? Do you have teachers? We are desperate. In regards to special education, in 2015-16, the Pew Trust organization put together some data and research, and over 64% of special education teachers are on provisional certification. So even if we can get them, they are the most needy of needing support to be effective in their work. And so we know that not only is this a legislative issue, it's a societal issue, it's an economic issue, because people are not entering the profession. There's a cost of living and housing scarcity, especially here locally. There's private sector competition. I do get my Starbucks every morning, and on the board where it says job opportunities, that they pay for a 4-year education, Spotify, 401k, and yet, as we've talked about in some of our CSEA classifications, we don't even make a living wage for our staff. We've got some priorities that we have to establish. We fully acknowledge that. However, as dire as that sounds, that those are all obstacles, those are all opportunities, because when we talk about the way in which we're engaging students, when we talk about the ways we're providing support for our teachers and staff, we know that we're doing different. And one of the ways in which we are doing that is when we interview and staff, This is part of the amazing human resources and front office staff, but this is actually a picture, and I haven't violated any confidentiality, but this interview panel is calibrating because we have moved towards proficiency-based demonstrations in our interviews. And so in addition to going through the writing process and filling in the online application, give you an example with our principals, they actually had to watch 3 videos of instruction, identify what was the effective practice in each of those videos, and then if they were going to support those individual teachers, what would be the coaching for each individual teacher, what would be the coaching if those teachers were indicative of their entire staff, and then what would be the implications for professional learning and support for their school. Demonstration of what you've done is a predictor of what you will do, and we expect the highest quality staff. And so we also know that that's a recruiting tool, because when you know you're working for a great team, you want to be a part of it even when there might be some of these obstacles. So just one example of the ways in which we're making some changes. In regards to demographics, you can see here the breakdown, and we mirror basically the national and state averages in regards to percentages. And again, it's interesting to note that, again, as of 2015, the state average ethnicity for teachers in the state of California is 63% white and 20% Hispanic. Yet, our student population is over 54% Hispanic and only 24% white. And there was actually just a recent article that I saw on my Facebook page or newsfeed out of the New York Times that talks about, there is data that demonstrates students learn better and more effectively when they are represented by teachers who mirror their cultural and linguistic culture. And so how are we making sure that we're recruiting staff that also represent our students? And we have some strategies for that. We have some evidence of that recently as well, so that we have and are hiring a more diverse workforce. So on this next slide, and I referenced this earlier in regards to our special education staff being probationary, but probationary are those teachers in their first year of practice. Interns are usually on a 2-year program, and they're getting their credential while they're teaching. And then temporary staff are those usually hard to fill positions that people are filling for short-term or leave of absences. And while we've done some work to reduce those, we also know that we want these numbers to be as low as possible, because we want highly qualified, and I'm using that in quotations from the old language of every child succeeds or no child is left behind, but to be competent in the strong relationships that they have with students. We need them to know their content. We need them to know the different pedagogical ways in which students learn differently and access information and learning differently as well. And so providing support for our temporary and short-term teachers to become full-time with the support that they need. So then that brings us to our open positions, section overages, and combination classes. Open positions, we do still have some. We have 2 at elementary, a music prep teacher and a counselor. At secondary, we have about 6 positions. And one of the things in staffing that's also problematic that we're working to address is we say 1 FTE equates to a person, yet we have many positions that are a 0.4, a 0.2, a 0.6. And we go to hire, well then that what really equates to is, think of 0.2 as 1 day of the week or 1 section. And so people want full-time employment. They want that stability, they want that continuity. And so we have to look internally as to what our student needs are and what our staffing match is to that, so we're reducing those. And that's one of the issues that we're finding with some of these secondary positions that are still available. Many of them are in science, and we also have some in math, because as we've reduced that class size to support that A through G, we made that a priority, and so we needed to hire more math teachers. We have done so, and yet we're still looking for one. So if anybody knows anybody, we have creative and alternative credentialing solutions that I can hook you up with. And at the district office, we're still looking for some of our support staff positions, but those are not our first priority, because we want to make sure that we have in the classroom in front of our students. In regards to section overages, another practice that we engaged in as a team is we actually met with all of the principals and their leadership team or counselors who were responsible for building their master schedules. And we sat down because we were upfront with them during the entire process. This is what your staffing allocations were. Here's what enrollment looks like. Here's how that enrollment is moving. And we usually wait those, those 2 weeks as we're monitoring that. Practically live time, we were having conversations about what that looked like, and then met with those teams to say, where are those adjustments? And in some cases, we were able to provide additional sections, and in one case, we do have an involuntary transfer that we had to do to adjust enrollment and staffing. And section overages right now for ones by contract, I think I have 6 classes that are actually in the electives and in the sciences, and then we compensate staff and provide that support. And then what's interesting to note with the combination classes, we tried to keep those as limited as possible as well. And right now, those are done by teacher-driven selection as well. So for example, at Proctor Terrace, we have 5-2-3 combos. That was because the teacher said, here's an instructional strategy and approach we want to use to support students at the 2nd and 3rd grade level, because at 2nd grade, they're still learning to read, and by 3rd grade, they should be reading to learn. And so they really wanted to integrate those 2 grade level spans. And so that was a teacher-driven choice that we support in master schedule and combo classes. But we've got about 15 overall, and some of that is because of those enrollment issues that we've talked about. So with that, another support that we provide that we're really proud of, and this also shows or goes to the partnership within CSEA and SRTA, is the idea for this substitute teacher training came out of Beth Helt, who is one of our HR technicians who supports our substitute desk, and then it's one of our teachers who actually provides the training and the facilitation. And we're looking to grow this. We've had great feedback. And so we believe that if we have a substitute teaching cadre who understands the way in which we teach, the practices that we expect in our classroom in regards to engagement, in regards to restorative practices and having strong relationships with teachers, or, well, strong relationship with teachers and strong relationships with students and amongst teachers and students, that we're gonna have stability with substitutes in our organization, so that we even moved towards, I'm calling them visiting teachers, because that's who and what they are in supporting our students. And so this training is just an example of building that cadre of support for our students. And so similar to what Steve has talked about, we know that we have work to do in regards to recruiting and retaining quality staff. We know that there are issues that we have control over and issues that we don't have control over. And we'll continue to bring you that information and updates as to what our specific plans are in those areas. But I wanted to bring you back to this notion that we started the evening with.
So yes, we started the evening with this quote, and as we weaved ourselves and wayfinded ourselves from the beginning to the end, I think it's important to refresh ourselves to remember that we still have work to do. So we have much work to do as a district. No longer will student outcomes be predicted based on race, differently abled, socioeconomic status, and or the language spoken at home. And with that, we turn it over to the board.
Thank you. Questions, comments from the board? Director Fong.
Wow. Congratulations, Diane, Superintendent Kitamura, and your team, each one of you. This is an amazing, amazing amount of work. And as you were talking, I was thinking also about your teams, the people that you work with that help to, the pictures of Lori on the screen and everybody who helped to create the substitute teaching and everything else that happened in every single one of your departments. That is an amazing amount of work. It is unfathomable. And what I really get is the systems, Superintendent Curtin, the systems that you've put in place. I'm only out of my school for 2 years, and the systems are completely incredible. I want to go back. We've got some vacancies.
I got a special ed spot.
I used to have to do this stuff myself, so a lot of it myself, so, or the teachers had to do it, and the sites had to do it. So just kudos to you, to us, Diane, your leadership, cabinet members. You know, as we know that you use the word onboarding or growing pains or getting better and better, I just see that we are just getting more complete. And at the end, you also said we have work to do. So you also know that we have work to do, but I think the intention, the capability, the capacity, the idea generation, the will, the passion, the dedication, and the moral compass that we show as a district. I'm so proud of you in this district. Thank you.
Thank you. Student board member.
So I also just wanted to say thank you from the students that the beginning of school, it really does set the tone for the whole year, and everything that you've done, it's so amazing. And then I just had a quick concern. So with the new clocks and bells, there's been a student, I don't know if it's a misconception, but it's not only at Santa Rosa High School, but at other schools, that there are listening devices in the clocks. Is that true?
The bell clock speakers can be used as a two-way communication tool between the classroom and the office. They're not installed to be listening tools. There is, the company demonstrated for us, an audible sound if the speaker is just turned on in a listening mode, and that is also a safety feature if something is going on in the classroom. People can hear what is going on. So they are two-way communication tools. They're not designed for listening for classrooms, for day-to-day classroom use.
And you would know if it was flipped on because there'd be an audible tone.
Correct.
Thank you. Good question. Director Sheffield.
Thank you. This was a great report, and it's exciting to see so much going on and us moving in this right direction. I had a question about, it was mentioned in the strategies for hiring a more diverse workforce, and I'm pleased and impressed that we are moving in this direction. I'm hoping that you can elaborate on how and what steps we're taking to do this.
So for example, one of our counselors was hired because we actually reached out to post-secondary universities that support great diversity in their own programs. So USD is one of those. And we also are reaching out to like historically Black colleges. And so we want to look at where are areas that we know that there's a need, and just be upfront about that. And so, for example, another partnership that we're looking to engage in is the National Equity Project, because we know that not only their staff, but then trainers who are coming out of that might be teachers, but they also might be people in the private sector who are working through an equity lens, maybe in nonprofits or the private sector, who haven't thought about being teachers, that we can then hook up with Sonoma or SCO to get their credentialing so that they're with us.
And you said it perfectly, that we need to be upfront about it, because it's you know, I've said it before, but when students go in the classroom and they model themselves after what they see, and if students are seeing teachers, instructors that don't look like them, you know, then they have no desire to become teachers or to even sometimes pay attention and focus. It's an understanding of you know, it's more than culture, it's more than ethnicity, it's more than race or even gender. It's how students imprint and model. So I'm pleased to see we're moving this direction and actually noticing as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
The other thing that I want to add to this is that it's even in our own structures, in our own systems. Who is on our hiring panels? Who is interviewing? What are the questions that are being asked? And how are we being extremely sensitive to differences. So even in our own practices from where we began 6 years ago to where we are now, it's vastly different. There was, first of all, hiring panels when I first got here had very few people on them. It was just a couple of people hiring, not a panel of people represented by SRTA, CSEA, but also other wonderful assets that can be brought. So I think it's a huge thing that we've really shifted on, where if Stacy's going to, Assistant Superintendent Spector is going to get to the point where if a panel isn't appropriately set up, if the questions are not set to look at differences, we won't have the panel. She's going to have to start over. So that's how righteous we're going to get about this.
All right. Anybody else? Thank you for the thorough, comprehensive report and for all your work as a team to make sure that the start of the school year was smooth as it could possibly be, and for always working to be better, and to be better not only as an organization, but as an organization that's mission-driven, that works through an equity lens and for the good of our students and our staff. So thank you very much. Okay. Joel. Didn't you want a break? Yeah. Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break. Okay. 5-minute break. Okay, let's get back to it. We are at FA, unaudited actuals, which is an action item, adoption of the, is that where we're at? Yes. Sorry. We're looking for a motion. We're about to steal your thunder, Rick. For Rick and Joel. Okay, please, proceed.
Thank you. Thank you, President Close, Superintendent Kitamura, members of the board. Tonight, we're bringing for approval the 2017-18 unaudited actuals. The unaudited actuals are the financial statements for the fiscal year-end close that need to be provided to Sonoma County Office of Education and the California Department of Education. At the June 27th board meeting, Joel and I presented the 2018-19 adopted budget with estimated actuals. The fiscal year then ended on June 30th. Staff completed their work of year-end close and the completion of unaudited actuals over the course of the last week. And we're here tonight to give you an update on the unaudited actuals. To my right is Executive Director of Fiscal Services, Joel Dantos, who will go over the presentation.
Okay, thanks, Rick. So I'll go through the unaudited financial report. It consists of revenues, expenditures, and then ending balance. We're going to start reviewing the highlights of the General Fund L1, and we'll conclude with going through the other funds. There's a lot of information that goes into this report. I've included some highlights and some major areas that need to be addressed, and at any time if you need any clarification or have any questions or want more detail, just let me know. So starting with the revenues, I showed what we showed at estimate, and now what we ended the year at with the unaudited actuals report. I think it's important to say the unaudited actuals report is a report that we come out of when we close the books internally, we come up with these numbers, and then they are ran through a final audit process with a CPA firm to verify their accuracy. So as you can see, we get our main state funding, federal revenue, other state revenue, and other local revenue. You can see the difference in our actual unaudited actual numbers here. The first line is we had our LCFF, the difference of LCFF sources is that's contributed to our LCFF final numbers, and as well as our local property taxes related to special education. So they came in fairly close to our estimates. Federal revenue, you can see there's about a $570,000 difference. Now, what the major contributor to that difference is we have federal revenues, our No Child Left Behind money, our title funds, and we actually get 27 months to spend that money, and it includes at budget time budgeting that entire allocation. Now at the end of the year, we drew that up, and there was actually some $573,000 of revenue that'll move into 18-19, and we'll spend that and budget that. The next item, other state revenue. Now this jumps out at you as fairly significant. What's included there is inside our financial report, we have to include our STRS liability, pension liability. We don't pay it, but we budget a revenue for that as well as an equal expenditure. At budget, we predicted a number, and then at the end of the year, they give us that liability. We get that from the CDE, and it actually came out right about $3 million over our budget. And we'll update our budget moving forward, but you'll see that in the next slide when we go over expenditures as well. And then when we get into other local revenue, that was where we budgeted our fire insurance money. There's another main contributor there, which is our local revenue, which is from donations. So we got donations throughout the year, and we've got our actual numbers, and then we also, which were increased, our local donations were increased compared to what our budget was. And then our fire donation, we budgeted everything that we had coming in for their fire insurance, and we budgeted all those expenditures, and we budgeted all those, and we budgeted offsetting revenues based on insurance. And we didn't actually spend all that. We'll carry that into next year and the coming years, but in our actuals, we finalized those numbers. So now I'll move on to expenditures. So again, you see there's what we finished with on our actuals number, and it's a fairly significant number what we actually finished when. There's some items in there that inflate that number that I'll go through, but I'll get to them. I'm gonna start going through each item. You know, our salaries, those first two line items, it came in under budget. What is included in those line items is all of our salaries, all of our overtime, all of our projected sub costs, and this year there was less substitutes. There was some vacancies that we carried through and then they never came through. So those are the significant contributors to salaries. Employee benefits, again, you're seeing the increase in STRS liability as well there, which was offset by the revenues. Another component to that ending balance in the employee benefits is we actually had some other post-employment benefits. We cleared some of those expenditures from the prior year. I can go into more detail on that, but that is a contributor to how the ending balance is affected as well. And then we're moving into books and supplies.
Joel, can I ask you on that?
Yes.
Because with the certificated salaries being essentially what was estimated and the classified salaries actually being lower than was estimated to the tune of 2.5% or something, it's actually more than that, tune of about, doing my math quickly, about 5%. One would expect that employee benefits would track that. Right. So it's substantially up. You said some of that STRS, some of that's carryover of expenses that weren't recognized in the previous year?
Correct, and I can go, so that is correct. Without those outliers, the STRS on behalf and the OPEB, they would track more in line with the salaries and benefits. And I can tell you the STRS impact was an increase, the STRS liability was an increase of about $3 million, and the OPEB prior year expenditure transfer was about $1.5 million. And I can give you an exact accounting of how how that employee benefit came out.
Was the STRS obligation at the end of the year different than we expected and as a result estimated for 17-18?
So it's really hard. I carried last year's budget and it came in at that, and then this year it came in with whatever CD gave me. I think only a couple years ago they started making us carry these liabilities on our actual financial report. So they're hard to budget. We just get that pension liability from the state at the end of the year, and but it's a phantom revenue, so it doesn't change the ending balance in any way. We just budget a revenue and then an expenditure and carry that, and that's how we carry that on our financial report.
Thank you.
And then moving on to books and supplies. So again, in books and supplies and as well as operating service and other operating expenditures, you're going to see some fire expenses that we budgeted. You know, we just went around and we tallied all our fire losses and we included expenditures for them, and then we reduced that. When we ended at actuals, it was about, you know, over 1.5, close to $2 million in budget expenses that we removed from our books. Then there was some materials we did budget, you know, in the LCAP and across all sites, and at the district main office level, we budgeted for materials, textbooks, and we did come in under budget, and as well as technology hardware, we did come under budget. And then in our contracts, and I included in the package as well that I gave you guys a fairly detailed accounting of a lot of the savings as well, which I can go into. And then in our contracts, our property line liability insurance came in under budget. We did budget an amount for travel and conference for our employees. We had some special ed contracts come in under budget. We go in and we encumber a lot of the contracts, and there's just a lot of changes in some of the special ed population students, and we came in with a really final number there. And then one other thing was we had come in with a budget under our busing, for our busing. If you remember in the last presentation, the busing was actually phased in through a percentage, and we came in under when we had actually not budgeted that savings in the original budget. And then our telephone and ending telephone costs came in under budget. Then you see in our capital outlay, a lot of that increase from capital outlay is actually moving from materials. It moves into the capital outlay because it's a material that someone decides to buy, but it's over $5,000. So it moves out of that 4 into that 6 expenditure category. And I mean, those are the major points for the expenditures. And now I'll move into how that affects the ending balance. So as you can see, we did budget a certain ending balance, and actually the first line here is net increase in current year fund balance. So we did project a deficit, and at the end of the audit, we had a surplus. Now it's somewhat manipulated in that we did have that $1.5 million in OPEB money that was an expense last year but moved into the expenditures this year. So that would have otherwise been a decrease in fund balance. So we did end the year healthier. We still have some budget work to do, but as you can see, there's a difference of $6.7 million in the ending balance. And I did provide a sheet, and everything that we talked about is a major contributing factor to the end there. And with that, our reserve for economic uncertainty with the reduction expenditures goes down, but these are the ending results in the general fund. Does anybody have any questions or want any clarifications on that?
So we have a whole bunch more money.
Well, the ending result this year is we did come in under budget in those areas, and I would say it's a whole bunch of money, yeah.
And so how does that run out for our 3-year projections in terms of likely cut necessaries over the next year to 2 years?
Do you want to answer that?
So you're absolutely correct. It will have an impact. This is part of the work that we have been doing over the course of certainly the last year, and then with me over the course of the last 3 or 4 months, is really looking at every part of our budget and making sure that everything is accounted for and correctly journaled or appropriately closed at the end of the year and moving that forward. We've, as everyone on the board is aware, traditionally we present the multi-year projections at the first and second and budget board meetings. We are actually going to start working on an updated multi-year projection now, so we have an idea here. We don't know exactly how that's going to play out in the out years yet, but it's safe to say that through the work that has been completed, we are in a better position than we were at budget or certainly at first interim last year.
And that 3-year would be helpful to get some sense of. I'm also very cognizant of the fact that these are unaudited financials. Yep. And that you don't want to be making any decisions based on those until we have audited financials. Is that fair?
It's fair. I think they're
Not that I'm suggesting that we'll see a drastic difference, but
I appreciate that.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, certainly we'll have initial projections, and then once audited come back, then we'll finalize that.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, so now I'll move into the other funds. So we have the other funds. Our special revenue fund is our charter funds 09, and it is the accumulation of all of our charter schools. You can see the estimated budget now. At the beginning of the year, we do budget them, budgeting, you know, making their expenditures, and then this is their actual, what's the result of their actual expenditures versus revenues. Child Development Fund 12 is our state preschool contract that we have for our families that qualify for that service. Cafeteria Special Revenue Fund. One thing I will bring about the Cafeteria Special Revenue Fund, this is how the unaudited actual results in the cafeteria include a current insurance claim for that lost revenue during the fires. It's not 100% that we're going, I didn't budget 100% of the fire insurance claim, I budgeted a portion of that. And when we settle that, it'll be trued up as well. I don't know what the end result of that is, if they'll want to have that put back in this current fiscal year, but we'll face that when we get there. Deferred Maintenance Fund 14, that's the end result of the actual versus budget. We have a Special Reserve Fund 17. You know, what's the increase there is we have a turf, we contributed our turf maintenance money, about $70,000, and there was some increase in interest in that fund as well. And then our building fund, Bond 21, wow, that's a big difference, $98 million. So we went out for another issue this year in the middle of the year, in June. So, which we updated that ending balance for. Capital Facilities Fund, you can see this is the ending actual developer fees that we collected over the years, and versus what we expensed. We did collect more in fees. And then the Schools Facilities Fund 35. So we had anticipated ending with about $6,000. We actually spent that fund, and then we moved some of that into the building fund, but that ended with a zero balance. And then our Special Reserve Fund for Capital Projects, Fund 40. So this is where we have our emergency repair program from the Williams Settlement work being done through, and we also have our Prop 39 Energy Act. And so we budget, you know, like we're going to spend all that, and then we spend it, and then we move it on to the next year. So that money carries into the next year for those projects. And then we have our self-insurance fund, our dental fund. So you can see we budget revenues and expenditures based on claims and this is the end result of that fund as well. So that concludes the unaudited actual report on those funds.
I have a blue card.
Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you. I have a blue card. Will Lyon?
Can I just finish up the last slide and then go to that?
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So next steps, we already discussed some of those with the multi-year projection. First interim, it's actually at the December 12th board meeting due to the county on the 15th, and then also the expectation of the audit report coming on the December 12th board meeting as well.
So, and that multi-year projection, it's going to be that night?
The first official multi-year projection will be that night, but we're working on one now as a preliminary or a check and balance of where we're at today with the 3 years out.
Thanks for clarifying that. Mr. Lyon. Sorry, Rick.
Now it's good.
I'm just having fun now. Okay. Good evening, everybody. First, I want to congratulate and thank and be grateful for the fiscal responsibility of not spending as much money as was there. So I'm really glad about that. I think that's a surprise for us that there's that much there. So we're really happy with that. I'm looking at the ending balance of 20 million. I want to point out that that's, as I read the other unaudited actuals sheet that came out in the report, that is the unrestricted. There's another like 5 million in the restricted funds. So altogether we're at nearly 25 million in reserve, if you look at restricted and unrestricted, which is about 13%. And I bring that up, not to bargain in public, but to ask, are we done, real question, are we done with the budget cut scenario that we had envisioned last year? We were gonna have one more year of budget cuts. It was supposed to be another 5 million this year. Is this over? Or, and I don't know, that's my question. All right, thank you. Structural deficit is the word I couldn't move. Are we done with the structural deficit? That's the word.
I'll be happy to make comment on that. At this point, it's too early to tell on everything, Will. We're going to take these numbers, we're going to create the preliminary multi-year projection. A lot of the money that we found, if you will, not really found, but made sure that all our budgets were cleaned up, would represent one-time money. It wouldn't represent ongoing cuts to, say, personnel or programs over a continuum, but rather it will immediately help our deficit right now. We still have an issue that there is a structural deficit, and that's what we'll work on, although it's gotten smaller, admittedly. We want to be sure before we proclaim budget victory or say that we're positively certified at this point. That's the work that we'll be doing over the course of the next several months in order to provide that in December. But the first step will be the preliminary multi-year projection. That'll give us a better idea of where we're at that we'll be happy to share. No, not tonight.
Okay. Director Carl.
Thank you. That was actually going to be my point with the last page that you have when I walk through the major contributing reasons for differences. I don't find a lot of things there that are ongoing differences that are going to make me jump up and down. I would rather be in this position than in the position we were before, which is why I asked when are we going to understand the multi-year projections, because I think there's some positive that's here. But by no means should this back off our desire to be adequately funded at the state level and all the things that CSBA does and everybody else, because this is not telling me that we're going to have all of these kinds of numbers every year on an ongoing basis. That's just not what's there on the major differences. So I'd rather be here than there, but it doesn't solve anything.
Correct.
Anybody else? Well, thank you for your good budgeting and your frugality and your efficiency and for this good report, because I agree with Director Carl. This is a better place than we thought we'd be in.
I move approval of the unaudited actuals.
Second.
Moved by Director Carl, second by Director Fong. Roll call vote, please.
Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Fong? Director Pugh?
Aye.
Director Anderson?
Aye.
Director Sheffield?
Aye.
President Close?
Aye.
Student Board Member?
Aye. President Close, may I just thank Assistant Superintendent Rick Edson and Executive Director Joel Dantos. This has been a real difficult, very difficult task. And they have tackled this with great determination to ensure that our budget was not built on a house of cards anymore, that it was truly built based on actuals, which I greatly appreciate. The other people I want to thank are our site principals. They truly understood the fact that we needed to budget appropriately, and our departments, our division departments, budget appropriately such that we could not have one way or the other, either not enough money or too much money in a particular budget. It's huge. And so I want to thank everybody for this group effort to get our budgets into a situation, our actuals into a place where we can continue to build from. So.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think this is the most comfortable I've ever felt with the picture of where we're at. You know, I feel very confident that this is accurate. So thank you. Yep.
So there's a mythology that's been bandied about and it's almost becoming legendary, and we hear it every so often. It's kind of like there's fiscal mismanagement in this district. We've been accused of that for years, but it's very obvious, it's quite evident, it should be to anybody who's paying attention to this, that we are looking at our budgets, our finances, fine-tooth comb, with integrity, thoroughly, robustly, and I want to put that old story to rest. I don't want to hear that anymore because that's not what we do, period. So, good job.
Thank you. Okay, so we are moving on now to F9, action item adopting resolution approving the appropriations limitation recalculation and estimated appropriation limitation calculation again limit.
Yeah, I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Moved by Director Cross, second by Director Sheffield. Roll call vote, please.
Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Sheffield?
Aye.
Director Fong?
Aye.
Director Pugh? Director Anderson?
Aye.
President Close?
Aye.
Student Board Member?
Aye.
Okay. Brings us to F10, approval of revised board policy 3513.3, tobacco and cannabis-free schools. It's an action item. Do we have a presentation? No. Do we have questions, comments, motion? Where are the headlights? Does somebody have a question? Does anyone want to make a motion?
I'll move item F10.
Oh, I had some questions, I guess.
Okay.
I was waiting for some, I'm sorry, I was a little bit confused. I was expecting a little bit, it's late in the night. So, I mean, I guess what my concern is, you know, without, you know, fully understanding, I mean, I'm concerned that there's a couple of things that are going on. One is the issue around cannabis and cannabis-based medicine at a district here in Santa Rosa. Well, it's in Santa Rosa, but and a temporary court order that is going to be heard later this month, I guess, or ruled later this month. And so I'm wondering about the timing of this, running also parallel with legislation. I think Director Pugh had mentioned it a bit earlier. JoJo Act, I can't think of the bill number right now, which is awaiting signing from the governor. And so I had a little bit of concern about the timing of us taking any action on this before there is some, I guess, direction that is either being given by the state or a ruling from the courts.
I guess my thought on that is that right now, because this policy is an inboard policy, that upon approval of it, at least we're covered with some sort of policy. When the court ruling comes down, when any of the decisions are made, we will certainly bring it back and it can amend the policy. That would be just
okay. I guess my concern is just a matter of days, really, on some of these, correct? I mean, it's really till the end of the month. We'll have an understanding or some direction by the end of September.
Yeah, it's totally up to the board. I'm just saying that if we feel that we should have a policy in place as of tonight, then we can do this and then make the changes at the next board meeting or whenever that ruling comes through. It's really what the board's desire would be in terms of a policy.
Director Carl.
Ed, can I ask what would be different under our policy with what you think is likely to happen?
Yeah, okay, so one of them is the legal argument, which is that the child that is at which school? Rincon Valley. I guess what the legal argument is that it conflicts with the Americans with Disabilities Act. And that I think last summer it was FDA had approved a cannabinoid drug for epilepsy. It was approved at the federal level. And that's why there's been sort of states, I think now there's 10 states that have done what California is attempting to do through the JoJo Act, turning it over to school districts to make that decision. So as things to consider as as we're considering this, I guess, as we're going to make a decision is sort of the sentiment that comes out of the signing of state legislation, but also the ruling that the determination of the judge on a student that lives here in Santa Rosa, not in our district, but here in Santa Rosa.
Right. Our council has said that because the state approves, it's one thing, but because the federal government doesn't approve, we're still under that jurisdiction, isn't that right?
Right.
You're correct.
And I completely understand that, but we have taken action on undocumented students as well that go against what the federal rule is.
Right.
I'm not looking to defend. I'm just saying I'm not quite ready to weigh in on this until we see what happens in the next weeks ahead. So I'm proposing that we table it.
Yeah, and
Does anybody have any feelings on tabling this?
What's the risk of not having a policy in place?
You know, can you look up very quickly if I think for us, the biggest one is vaping in this current new policy.
Is what?
Vaping. Okay. The issues around vaping. And the consequences thereof and the definitions thereof of vaping. We're just getting a lot of use. And our student board member can probably attest to that. And so, again, Steve, have you had any experience in terms of, would this help to have this in place, or are we okay with our current policies?
We would certainly like to strengthen it in this policy for vaping to make it very clear. If we could disassociate the cannabis side of it for special ed purposes. Obviously it's illegal right now in our law and our education code, but the idea around vaping would provide some clarity for site administrators.
I know when I went and spoke at Maria Carrillo at their, I forget what it's called, but that day. The number one thing the students were concerned about was vaping. I heard it from all of them. Well, I mean, what if we voted on this and put it on our next agenda?
Sure.
That we had a policy in place, but we also had it on the next agenda, which would be following, an expected court ruling and anything that happens in those legislations, so that it's already scheduled to come back in case we need to make some revisions.
Yeah,
Right. All right, well, it's an action item, so I'll entertain a motion, or
you can move it and move it with an amendment.
I'm going to move adoption of the resolution and request that it be brought back upon any change in either a court ruling or other state or federal action that occurs with recommendations of immediate changes.
Are we looking for a second?
Yeah, we really are.
Second.
Thank you. Can I speak to the motion? Thank you. I hear there's an issue with respect to vaping. I want to give the staff the ability to deal with it. I am very cognizant of the fact that we are likely to want to fool with this based on what comes forward, and there's some real policy issues there to deal with. But I'm not hearing that there's any likelihood that this policy is going to be enforced in any fashion in relation to that, and that it gives us the power, or that gives staff the power, or something that is a real issue right now. So that's the purpose of, let's pass it, but let's be very clear about the fact that staff has direction to bring this back for any changes relative to what may occur here in the next month to 2 months.
Okay, so it's a motion by Director Carl and a second by Director Pugh. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Pugh? Aye. Director Fong? Aye. Director Anderson?
Aye.
Director Sheffield?
No. Nay.
President Close?
Aye. Student Board Member?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. So that brings us to F11. It's also an action item, second reading and approval of Board Bylaw 9005.1, the Code of Ethics.
I move approval.
Second that.
Moved by Director Carl, second by Director Fong. Roll call vote, please.
Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Fong?
Aye.
Director Pugh?
Aye.
Director Anderson?
Aye.
Director Sheffield?
Aye.
President Close?
Aye.
Student Board Member?
Aye.
Okay, F12, action item, second reading and approval of Board Bylaw 9100.
I was trying to go over there to see if this last thing that occurred, is that in there? Is there anything about appointments in this one?
He's talking to himself,
Talking to
I believe.
myself.
Does anyone have anything to say out loud to the group?
Yeah, what I'm trying to do is buy a minute here, if you could, before anybody makes a motion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I will ask, does anyone have any questions or comments or have any feelings or something they want to share while Bill Carl is
No, I'm good. You have no feelings.
Googling or something?
Thank you for buying some time.
Talking to himself.
I will move approval.
Okay.
A second.
Let's look alive, everybody. Moved by Director Carl, second by Director Sheffield. Roll call vote.
Director Carl?
Aye.
Director Sheffield?
Aye.
Director Fong? Aye. Director Pugh? Director Anderson?
Aye.
President Close?
I just want to say that I feel like we're a little out of shape. You know, it's only 9:37, right? We are here way later than this.
We have to build up to
We're
it.
out of practice. Okay, aye. Motion carries. And
Student Board Member?
Student Board Member.
I'm going to abstain from this one.
Okay. Okay. We need a student, yeah. We'll adjourn the meeting. Thanks, everybody. Always a pleasure.